G'day, Ghost Pals, AoS Coach here, and we are talking all things Nighthaunt. I am here with the Ethereal Tourist himself, come out of the Black Coach. We all know that there's a vampire in the Black Coach, and despite there's no vampire keyword or hero keyword, Mason Knox has come out of the Black Coach of his coffin. Recently did incredibly well at the GW Tacoma Open with Tacoma,
Yep.
right?
Yep, Tacoma.
No, Tampa's coming soon. Tacoma's the one that's passed.
That's right.
But we are talking all things Nighthaunt. And Mason, you went, was it 7-1?
7-1, yeah.
7-1.
It's
First off,
brutal
incredible
8 rounds.
to 8 rounds is incredible.
Yeah.
Second of all, 7-1 is incredible. So Mason is going to help us understand Nighthaunt 4th edition faction pack. I am going to caveat one thing, though, before I introduce Mason and Mason shares a bit more about us. I am living in a world where I assume Nighthaunt is going to be toned down a little bit, whether it is by points, whether it is by some adjustments in rules. We don't know exactly what they're going to be. One early prediction, if I was making a guess, is like when you look at, is it hex raids versus like every other cavalry unit? Like, why do you have objective control score 2? Why are you specifically over everyone else has OC2? So like, there's a couple of things like, look, Nighthaunt is really strong. So I'm not going to encourage you to go spam like the really hotness right now. I'm trying to hopefully think about a world where if things are adjusted a little bit, what does the world look like and how do you have a very fruitful and awesome Nighthaunt experience? But Mason, introduce yourself. Obviously, you are a tourist. You've played all around the mortal realms with various factions.
Yep.
Why Nighthaunt and who are you?
Yeah. Hey. So yeah, my name's Mason Knox. I play in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State. And we've got an awesome scene up here. Love Warhammer. I'm really excited to play 4th edition. And yeah, like you alluded to and like we chatted about, I definitely am a tourist for Nighthaunt. You know, leading up to 4th edition, I didn't really follow too many of the releases or the rules as they like slow dripped them out because I didn't want to learn anything the wrong way. So I was trying to stay excited and read nuggets here and there, but really not fully invest because I wanted the learning to be pure when it was time, just so I didn't learn anything wrong and lock it in and mess up that process. So really excited, but it was a fire hose of information, right when they started releasing the factions. I was not looking at Nighthaunt to begin with at all. And leading up to the event the week of, I saw chatter online about what it was doing, and I knew that I had an opportunity to play Nighthaunt if I wanted to. So I figured I'd get a test game in, just one test game, and that showed me enough that that I was good to go with Nighthaunt for that Friday. So a few days later, I did modify the list a little bit, but yeah, I mean, Nighthaunt, it's in a really good spot right now. I think the main idea, and I think a lot of this will remain the same. I agree. We're going to see nerfs pretty soon to probably a few different aspects, probably hit it in a couple ways, but even then, just fundamentally in a lot of ways, Nighthaunt bends the rules. It breaks the rules in some way, the core rules that everyone else is abiding by. So in that regard, you're punished sometimes less for making mistakes or charges you shouldn't have made, or not making a long enough charge or something to that effect. So for that reason, and obviously the nerfs aren't here yet, I saw an opening and I took it.
And, jokes aside, you've done incredibly well in the past with Nighthaunt, obviously Nighthaunt, but you've obviously done really well with Flesh Eater Chords, Beast of Chaos, Maggot-kin of Nurgle. So while we joked about you being a tourist, you are a well-versed tournament player who, in actual fact, having experience and doing really well with lots of different factions is something that I would highly recommend players, because you get a really good breadth of experience and you get to understand the different play styles a little better. I know when I'm building my armies, I'm always looking for different things across different factions. So I don't always find like, right, okay, well, if the destruction is the go forward and smash thing, what's the counterplay? What's the fragile army? What's the army that has lots of movement shenanigans? So it does make us a well-rounded kind of player.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
to the testament of you, yes, Nighthaunt is going really well, but doesn't mean that you can just pick up Nighthaunt and just go 5-0 at your next GT, right? You know, it does take
Yeah,
skill, it does take practice, it does
absolutely.
take tournament stuff. So,
Yeah. And to your
what?
point, playing the other factions and knowing about that up until the launch of the new edition, it was, a huge advantage when I would go to a GT and I'd get to an opponent in rounds 1, 2, 3, even up, even up till the finals. And I can say to my opponent, I know what your army does. Just tell me what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and let's play. It's so nice to be able to do that, because I don't need to focus on remembering your intro about your tricks and your gimmicks. If I just have all that locked in, then I'm in a good spot, right? And I joked with my buddy that it was going to be fun for the next 6 months, 12 months, even more, for some folks to every time go to a table like, what does your army entirely do? Because it's all so new right now, and I think in a lot of ways that made this tournament really fun, but in a lot of ways was a challenge. I think people were going to revert back to comfortability, because in a lot of ways, most of the armies kept their core identity.
Yeah, and that's probably why also you see a lot of spam lists, because it's easy to run all the hex raids, all the whatever it is,
Yeah.
Harridans or whatever, like Grimmies, do your thing, right? And you
Hmm.
you are seeing a lot of spam lists out there, and it's not because it's the most efficient or best list. In some case, it absolutely is, but in a
Sure.
lot of the case, it's the smooth brain, easy way to introduce yourself to fourth edition, and
Yeah.
you'll probably eventually see those lists kind of mature, and you'll pull things out, and you'll start building out these 500 block regiments, or you'll start playing around with it as this Wild West starts to settle, and you start feeling more comfortable, and
Yeah.
you, you get the point.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to me about. We'll go to Nighthaunt in a second, but talk
Hmm.
to me about fourth edition and your learning so far, given, you've played a lot of different factions. You didn't necessarily play a lot of Nighthaunt, but you certainly would have played against a lot of Nighthaunt in fourth edition, in third edition.
Yeah.
What have you found rules wise that has been really impactful for your understanding of Nighthaunt and doing really well? Whether it's the CP, whether it's, the no inspiring presence, or even battle shock, which obviously works against Nighthaunt being a bravery 10 formerly
Right.
faction. Objectives have gotten smaller. There's so many different things. What has been really important for you for Nighthaunt?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that the command point piece is really important. Over the weekend, even though I was doing really well, after every game, I kept telling myself and even vocalizing out loud, I've got to work on the command point control, the command point usage, because that stuff starts to creep away really quickly. But alongside that, all out defense now is one of the only ways you can get +1 to save, right? A few factions have it, like Catacross is doling it out, and Stormcast is doing 1 on their turn. But like by and large, there's not many other +1 to saves. And with command points being so sparse and everybody wanting to cast spells and do counter charges and break away at the end of combat with power through, um, Nighthaunt kind of lucked out, because staying ethereal 4-ups, basically army wide, sans chain rasp, you're not at that much of a disadvantage as you were in third edition, when save stacking was much more prevalent, right? So I think they didn't have a lot of major points changes, and in some cases reductions in points, but weren't touched in that way. I think in some regard that piece was overlooked, and maybe that's why they have OC2, or like I jokingly say that they technically have a way worse save than a lot of the Cav, because Cav on a lot of times is on 3-ups and they're 4s, right? So maybe that's why they gave him OC2 and forgot about Ethereal. I'm not sure, but yeah, that lack of save stacking, coupled with the anti-X, if I say it that way, anti-charge, anti-infantry, anti-cav. A lot of times an army composition like you would create with Nighthaunt, keyword wise, would be punished by a lot of those, but I'm ignoring your rend. So the bonus that they're handing out like candy now, because it's less powerful buffs than of the past, but still good. But now I'm unaffected entirely by those. So they're, in a way, like Gargants when third edition came out. It's like nothing changed about Gargants fundamentally when third edition came out, but the core rules changed, and all of a sudden they just capitalized on all of these new changes and a monster meta, and they dominated that space for a little while. I feel like Nighthaunt is in that kind of similar space right now, where they have a couple of broken things right now that they're going to retool, but by and large, they just capitalize on the changes of 4th edition really well. So I think that's what kind of sets them in that category of S tier, or a cut above, however you want to look at that.
Yeah, they're a perfect storm, really, and this is again why I'm talking, a future version of Nighthaunt, where there's some points that need to be adjusted, there's some rules that need to be adjusted, but when you look at this faction pack, there's no real bad. Like the units are overall pretty good. I even made the joke to somebody when I was reading the faction pack for the first time. The Scriptor Mortis is not terrible. It's not great. It's not great, but it's not terrible. And when you look at it, you're like, maybe I will actually include this. It actually might have some legs, as opposed to the last version where it looked good in
They
theory.
were like, how about 70 points? And people still didn't take it, right?
Like, nah.
I do think he's kind of funny. Comically, you called out that one guy, but like in every essence, they've been trying to get away from extra die rolling. Now they say roll a D3 and on a 2-up, take that many mortals. The Scriptor Mortis still needs to roll like 3 dice on 4-ups or something to proc the ability. Yeah, it's hilarious, but I agree. He's not completely awful, so
not like crossbows. Yes, Nate Trentinelli's doing really well with them despite breaking the meta, but crossbow now is actually not bad. Like when I look
better,
at
I think.
No, correct. Like when I look at the rules and I'm like, there's a lot of viable units and a lot of viable options. Right now, there's some things that stand out across because of whether it's points or rules and things that might get toned down.
Right.
But the book is in a really good health, and they will be like Nurgle. They'll just be competitive throughout the entire season until something fundamentally changes, whether it's too many points or whether the game completely tweaks it and it no longer rewards Nighthaunt, which I don't see coming anytime soon.
Right. And, I did play a little bit of Nighthaunt in 3rd edition. I think actually I did a battle report with Rerolling Ones and Jack. You're repping them right now. And I play Nighthaunt on the channel. So it definitely wasn't my first rodeo with Nighthaunt, to be fair. And it was everybody's first rodeo with 4th at the tournament. So it was all bets were off there. But I will say that they really do feel true to how they felt before. They actually underwent major changes, on paper they're way different, but their feel is really good. I think as we get into it, I'll point out the stuff that I think will definitely be addressed in some regard. Who knows how harsh? Sometimes we see that they try to do a light hand, and sometimes they just like do the hammer to bring it home. But even if we assume worst case scenario on the few adjustments that they might do, the army still, like you were saying, feels really strong. It feels really good. And I hope that it's not changed again when their book comes out, because this feels like a really good spot to be in, but we don't really have an example quite yet of what the index to book transition is going to be like. So I think Stormcast and Skaven will give us a good idea if it's like just a pass through onto your book, or if we're, potentially looking at major fundamental army changes when the books come out. So
I don't think so. I really don't think so. If you look at what they've done in 40K,
why waste the time, right? It's good stuff. So
I think they've got the play, like the style perfect with Nighthaunt. It'll just be as well. Like the other thing as well, and like I don't want to harp on this, folks, and Nighthaunt people. Look, I could have started this conversation really negative, like you're OP, you're busted, you need to be broken. But these things will get tweaked and fixed. So I'm trying to look forward and be positive and say, right, well, if you are playing against Nighthaunt right now, you really need to understand the army in order to do really well at a tournament. You're likely to play them. If you're someone who's already playing Nighthaunt and you're like, I'm going to go out and buy all of the hex raids, like, cool, do it, but know that your time is coming where your points are either going to be adjusted, the rules are going to be adjusted, and then you're reselling half of your hex raids on the Facebook marketplace, whatever.
Yeah.
But overall, pull that back for a side. I think you're looking really good. Rules look good. Units look good. The play style feels like it's the 3rd edition Nighthaunt, but with its own little unique flavor. And I've actually been playing a lot of Nighthaunt in Spearhead. That was actually the first faction I thought I'd build, and I've been really enjoying it. Really enjoying Spearhead Nighthaunt.
We haven't said it yet, but it's so awesome that everybody can just fly. Like it's real good.
Except chain rats do nothing. Like I hate them so much. They go into combat and I'm like, because I've been playing against a lot of Stormcast in Spearhead, and it's just like armor save 3. I think I got no randoms. Like I hate this. Like,
they're a speed bump at best.
They got regeneration. Anyway, anything else you talk about with Nighthaunt, or should we actually get into the rules? And we can kind of unpack this a little further. Yeah. So, all right, let me bring up the rules and we'll talk a bit about what is going on. So your faction pack, some things have stayed the same, some things have tweaked a little bit, but so has everybody. Let's start at probably your greens, right? So you got your ethereals, no real major change here. You ignore positive and negative modifiers. Most Nighthaunt players, well, all Nighthaunt players, I would hope, know this rule by now. I guess the key difference here is, as Mason has already said, is the fact that like there's no finest hour, there's no real mystic shield anymore. So save stacking can be really hard. And while that doesn't mean
existent.
Yeah, I mean, like, Cruel Boy's got some things. There's some things here and there, but overall, like, it's pretty hard to do. And while that doesn't mean anything to you, it does mean that your rend and your attack profiles will probably go further than it had in the past, where you were dealing with a +2 or a +3 save. Well, guess what? You don't need it anymore.
Right. One noticeable thing here, though, is I believe Ethereals also had the text to let you retreat. Was it retreat and charge? Was that part of the ethereal in the last book? It's not tied to your battle trait anymore. So Nighthaunt don't automatically get to retreat and charge any longer. That used to be part of their battle traits. But the other green there, Discorporate, that did follow us over. So while we can't benefit from all-out defense, Discorporate is the gimme, if you will, that I call it, that they get. So they're not gimped by not having all-out defense. It just upgrades your ward from a 6 up to a 5 up in the shooting phase or the combat phase for 1 unit in lieu of all-out defense.
Yeah, great call. And just, in case anyone missed it, not that you could do it in 3rd edition, but no, you can't make Nagash ethereal. That would be a little too crazy. Like, imagine that. Like, I just hate myself. Like 1,000-point superhero ethereal. It's like, I hate this guy.
I might actually take him if that was the case.
Well, we'll talk about Nagy soon, and we'll understand where he sits in the Nighthaunt throne.
Right.
You've got your Wave of Terror, and then you've got these 3 things called the Aura of Dread. So when you played along, again, you've got a minimum 8 games of tournament experience under your belt so far. How have you looked at the different rules? Now, I can read word for word, right? I hope by now you've either looked at it on the app, you can look at it here on the screen.
Yeah.
Let's start with the Wave of Terror, right? Like when you look at the Wave of Terror being a once per turn, it's in the charge phase, your friendly Nighthaunt units read it, blah, 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 blah. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, I think Wave of Terror is probably one of the best game bending or game breaking things that I was talking about, because what this allows you to do is charge while you're in combat, right? Unless you roll a 3 or less, then it auto fails, which is the worst case scenario, but you can reroll still. But it makes it so that you don't need to retreat and charge. So how we talked about before we lost that, now instead on your turn, you can just charge from the combat you're in. So a couple of things about that. You've got Blade Guys Revenants and Hex Wraiths that are dealing more attacks or more damage on the charge. So if we're locked engaged in combat, I can just charge you in my charge phase. I just roll, and as long as it's a 4 up on the charge, then I'm good. I could just stay where I'm at. I could pile position, if you will, and move around. Or if I roll a 10, I can go straight through that unit all the way to the heroes behind you because I fly, right? So there's a lot of application for charge in combat. Now, when I first read it, I thought once per turn army, your charge phase, like everything else. I can do this once. Well, it was pointed out that it says friendly Nighthaunt units that are in combat can use charge abilities. That means all of them, right? So I think this is something potentially a lever they could pull to hamstring Nighthaunt ever so slightly, is they could limit this to, I would think strict would be like limit it to 1. Maybe they limit it to 1, 2, or 3. It's hard to say, but I think this is one of those levers that they could pull to really dial them back in, because right now what Wave of Terror really does is on your charge phase, you're never locked up. If they try to tag you with a redeploy that lets you walk into combat, or do like a Shalaxi counter charge intercept kind of a thing, murder lust, all of that stuff that normally they would movement trick you to try to stop you from charging to get your bonuses, you're not penalized right now for that. So in that way, Wave of Terror is very, very good.
Yeah, it's a great rule. I'm not going to predict what it looks like. It could be D3, it could just be 1, it could be a bunch of things.
Right.
But this is really rewarding the player who can read the board, can be looking at the opportunities that are kind of opening up, and really thinking about positioning, right? Like this is such a good rule. Like I can't stress it enough. Being able to be in combat with, I don't know, a chaff unit, and then essentially slingshotting into something in the backfield, and the fly ability and a good dice roll will really allow you to get in and whether it's take on an objective, take out that support hero, get into a more favorable combat. Like there's so many use cases for it. And you were telling me earlier before we kind of went live, if somebody countercharges you, like, cool, okay, well, guess what? You've countercharged me with that Manfred, the dragon, the vampire lord on zombie dragon, or some kind of crazy monster beat stick. Cool. Well, I'm still gonna charge out. I'm gonna get out of this.
Yeah. The timing is always important on like who gets to use their abilities first. So always keep that in mind. And then a final note, just for people playing against Nighthaunt, I can only do this on my turn. So I cannot Wave of Terror on a counter charge, out of combat in your turn. I don't get to do that. It's balanced, air quote, in that way. But just it's always a good thing to remember that it's only on my turn.
Thank you. Yeah, good call. Good call.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 3 other abilities all under the Aura of Dread ability. Now, keep in mind, this is a keyword and it is played throughout the battle tome. So you just remember that one.
Yeah.
So 3 abilities, Shriek, Stun, and Petrify, all coming in during the charge phase. Now, how have you found these rules playing out? Which ones are more popular or useful than others? Like, talk me through these 3, because one of the things that I guess if I'm a newer or inexperienced player, I can fall into analysis paralysis. You can see I've got 4 rules all in the charge phase.
Yeah.
Like, which one do I use, when and how and why and with who? And like,
Sure.
talk me through the logic behind the 4 oranges.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing, if you recall from 3rd edition, you applied a buff depending on how well you rolled for your charge every time units charged. And so something you saw them do frequently was try to stack minuses to hit, but more importantly, minuses to save. And that's how Nighthaunt got away with not having rend. Is I said, okay, I'll just reduce your save by -3. And now I've got rend 4, basically, right? So now that doesn't work because we get to do each of these 3 things only one time, right? Coupled with that, points kind of across the board went up. Units are smaller in general, armies are smaller in general. So you're not having maybe as many things go in as you did previously. So you don't feel it as much, but you're definitely not reducing the hits or the saves nearly as much. Now,
and you saw it play out. Like, just to pause you for a second.
Yeah.
You used to see it play out in Nighthaunt lists where it was all MSU, minimum size units. You would run just constant units so you could kind of tap in and kind of get that 10 up charge roll just to be able to tap into all of the 3
choices,
3 waves of terror.
Yeah.
Like, because it was like, if you rolled, like, was it under 7 or something, there was an ability. It was like 7 to 9.
Yeah, for some reason I'm thinking -1 to hit, -1 to save, and strike last, which is basically what we have here. Just with more control in a limited way, I suppose. And the reason why I say that is because I now get to pick when I want the buff or debuff to go off. And I have control of how I list build, so I can dictate which ones can, which units can do which options. Because if you look for Shriek, this is a Nighthaunt unit that has more models than the enemy that it is trying to do Shriek on. So if I reinforce a unit of Blade Geist Revenants up to 20, then I'm way more likely to get the Shriek off than if I'm trying to do it with just a unit of 5 crossbows or something, because then I'm going to need to be fighting something with 4 or less. And then at that point, it's much harder to get Shriek off. So in army construction, you are looking to probably want to have a couple of reinforced units of something so that you have a higher likelihood to activate Shriek on the charge. That one is just handing out the -1 to hit for the rest of the turn, but still really valuable, right? We're kind of in a debuff game right now. That's kind of the flavor. So having your own access to this, really powerful, especially because we'll see later, you got a lot of access to -1 to wound. And so having both of those live coupled with that ethereal, the green over here, discorporate for the 5-up word, all of a sudden your spooky ghosts are very, very tanky. When you're looking at stun, this is the one that's going to give -1 to save. It has to be done with a cavalry or a war machine. So yes, Hexwraiths are looking good because they're fast. You have the run and charge that we'll see. And the OC2, of course, but they also are one of the best options to apply stun, because it doesn't matter how many. If I've got 1 Hexwraith left in that unit and he makes the charge, I can give whatever I'm within the inch of -1 to save. So it's a war machine or a cavalry. So the war machine options let like Ulrich the Drowner and the Black Coach trigger that stun ability as well, or anything with the cavalry keyword. So again, in list building, it's important to try to slot at least a couple of those in, because you want to have options to give one of the best debuffs in the game, being -1 to save.
I didn't notice that Ulrich the Drowner, the boat person, not to be confused with Lolchin, the Soul Seeker Endless Spell boat person. I didn't actually see that Ulrich was a war machine. Obviously, the Black Coach being the one and only, but
yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, and Ulrich's great. I don't know how much War Scroll Talkin will do, but I really like him.
We will definitely talk War Scrolls.
Yeah,
and I think I can't remember who I was talking to, because I've actually got an unbuilt Ulrich up here, and I never found the reason for it. And then when I saw it in 4th edition, I'm like,
yeah,
this is actually quite useful now.
Yeah, it is spicy. The last aura here briefly is only triggered with Nighthaunt heroes. So that's where things get a little dicey, because our heroes are not the tankiest, biggest heroes in the world. But with the other debuffs that you're doling out with the threats of the rest of your units, it can make target selection a little bit hard for your opponent. But you do apply a really important one, which is Strike Last. So this one, I think you're using slightly less often than you're using Stun and Shriek, but when it happens, it can be really, really big. And it can be the difference maker of whether or not you send in the hero for the kill moment or not, because it's not a 2-up. It's not something you can fail. I just need, once I make this charge, I know that I'm going to apply the Strike Last. So if you had a unit on a flank go in, a big unit to try to get a big kill with your reinforced Harridans or Blade Geist, and then you sent in a smaller unit with the hero that you didn't want to fight first, you give that hero Strike Last, you kill the thing on the flank, then you go in over here with everything before that hero has the chance to retaliate, or that unit has the chance to retaliate. So all of these are really powerful, but you need to think about that while you're list building and while you're maneuvering around the board and up the board. Yes, you have a lot of freedom and flexibility with your charge. You can leave one combat and slide into the next across the battlefield. You're really free-forming, but you do need to consider where and how you want to use these buffs, because it's only once each.
Can I ask you, because of course I can ask you, it's my bloody video. So Shriek is a lot more obvious, right? Like, charge a unit that you've got more bodies around. And if you want more of a guarantee, reinforce the unit. Chain Rasp, Grimghast Reapers, things that, can give you more models is going to be a good way to access that. Stun, really good example. You've got, Ulrich, and you've got the Black Coach, or you've got your cavalry units, your Hexwraiths. Obvious.
Yep.
With Petrify, I just want to double down this one for a second, right? When you look at Petrify, are you thinking about smaller, minor heroes that are fair trade pieces, whether it's like a Tomb Banshee, a Khan Wraith, something that is a minor hero that you don't care if they die? Or are you thinking about much more of your tankier heroes? And I say that, not that your heroes have a lot of wounds, but you're thinking, your Lady Alindas, you're thinking your Cruel Ghast, you know, more of those. I can't believe I called 7-wound heroes tankier.
Right.
But you get the point. You got the
Yeah, I know
5-wound
what you
heroes, your
mean.
7-wound
Yeah.
heroes, and then you've got Nagash.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's tough, right? Because all of the heroes are fragile, all things considered. Yeah, of course you can spike 4s, and sometimes if you only roll 4-ups, you've got the tankiest heroes on Earth. But I think it really depends on list construction. One thing that they've done a good job, at least in my observation thus far for 4th edition, is they've got a lot of the champion and unit pairings that they've put together, and we see that pretty evident in this book. Like the Guardian of Souls does well with infantry. The Karen Wraith is going to do well with the Grimghast Reapers. The Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed is going to do well with the Hex Wraiths, right? So they've got those power pairs, and so I think that's where that decision is going to come from, less so than which ones are the best ones to do these with, because I think you're actually needing your heroes to fill a lot of shoes and wear a lot of hats, and so Petrify to me is a afterthought of that, because it's so much more important now at list building because of the regiment structure and who can go with what and what synergies you're building towards, that I think that Petrify is just I'm gonna have heroes and eventually they're gonna fight, and so hopefully it's on my terms, and that's what I'm applying to Petrify, right? I will say the Cav heroes are very fast, right? So if you move 12 and then you can charge, or you take the run and charge subfaction and you can potentially go 18 in charge, you're a lot likely to trigger the Petrify probably. However, the foot heroes all move the same speed as the infantry, so they're keeping up as well if that's the route you're going. So it really does circle back to that list building idea. And I will say, don't try to trigger Petrify with your Lady Olinder. Yeah, I mean, of course, if it's your only option, then go for broke. But that should never be something you're trying to do with her, and she's your tankiest one.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Because I was just, as you were talking, I'm looking through all the war scrolls, just refreshing myself.
Yeah,
You've got no heroes that have like 10 wounds other than Nagash. Like everyone is either sitting at 7 or they're sitting at 5. So to find that really good unit to petrify, there is no obvious choice. You've got to, to your point, find those trade pieces. And I guess the question is, do you want to go high drops? And if you really want to build into petrify, then maybe you are going to be 4 or 5 drops because you're taking a lot of cheap heroes and trying to trigger that ability.
right.
On the flip side, know that they're probably going to die. So
yeah, I mean, there's still some protection from shooting if they're near your guys. You got to be way more careful with your bubbles and your screens now, because 3-inch combat range. Oh, I'm tickling into 3. Okay, every attack into that hero, right? So you got to be really careful with that. The Lord Executioner is a good call out for a foot hero that's probably going to be the best one to get into combat. He naturally has the 5-up ward, and he has a really good start of combat thing to reduce. I think it's your attacks. It's a really good like debuff that he can dole out on top of that. So that makes him probably the best little foot hero to do it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. On a 2-up, you subtract 1 from attack characteristics.
Yeah.
In addition, if the target is a hero, subtract 5 from the control score as well.
Yep. So yeah, he's a solid pick, and he's one of those ones that you could slot in with some of the other heroes. The Lord Executioner can piggyback into a regiment and not need to be a drop of his own. So he's definitely a good look if you're trying to find somebody to fill that role.
And a good attack profile. Like, as I was going through the various profiles to see, right, well, yeah, I trigger Petrify, but who do I want to actually be fighting in combat?
Yeah.
A lot of them don't have the greatest profile, but when I look at the Lord Executioner, it's a pretty solid profile with the anti-hero, the crit auto wounds, the consistent 3s and 3s, Ren 2. It's a good profile.
Right. We definitely haven't mentioned it, but it's a notable time to call it out. The whole army on every single profile has crit auto wound, and it is... I can't speak enough to how powerful that is when you're throwing the volume of dice that these guys get to throw. It is just so good. I think it's fair to say going into this, because it was a little bit uncommon for sixes explode, at least in stuff that I was flirting with, that I underestimated how powerful auto wound is. It's really good.
It's been my saving grace in Spearhead with
Yeah.
the chain rust hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s.
Right.
Just to auto wound that, you just get a couple actually through. So
Well, everyone's experienced, right? Where they got 6 really good attacks, like the Magath Lords, right? Okay, boom, all hits, and then you roll wounds and 4 fail. It's like, oh my goodness, you know. So yeah, if like 3 of those auto wound now, that's really good.
yeah, no, it does help the chain rasp and the Grimghast Reapers and the things that aren't Hex Raids and Dreadside Harridans. Gives them a little bit more
it still helps
playability.
them too.
Yes, I'm trying to like give some love to like the non ones we're talking about. I'm trying to help
You know
the
what's
little
fun?
people.
Okay, here's a nugget. It works on the crossbows shooting attacks. 6 is auto
No,
wound. Yeah,
really? I'll bring it up.
it's awesome.
I'm gonna bring it up. It does
Yeah.
too. It does too. I hadn't even noticed that. There you go.
Yep.
Crit auto wound on the crossbow, 16-inch range. Love that.
Yes.
Love that.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, by and large, though, these Aura of Dreads, really good allegiance abilities. It's really empowering as a player to put the onus on you to execute your abilities. Sometimes they're wide sweeping buffs army wide, and usually those are not as powerful or as impactful as ones like this, where I have the agency as the player to control where I put my allegiance abilities. And so Nighthaunt having that with that freedom flexibility that we've mentioned a couple times on the table, it feels really good. You know, if you're a strong tactical general, this army, it has huge payoffs.
And this is where, for example, if I'm an enemy going into Nighthaunt, being able to countercharge you or being able to charge you before you get to charge your really good thing is going to be critical if you want to be able to shut some of these things off. So just keep that in mind and know that the trigger is based off the charge. So any way you can charge them, it's just going to help you handle some of these. No different to 3rd edition with the Wave of Terror. Like you just want to charge them and pin them in for, yeah.
Yep.
Anything else when it comes to battle traits, or should we get into our battle formations?
No, I think the only other thing to mention is, again, just to touch on Discorporate. It's really awesome defensive ability. If they've got a really big shooting attack or shooting line, giving whatever unit is closest or the thing you want alive the most, the 5-up ward is really handy. But the CP usage and the CP game that you play becomes really tough, because yes, you definitely want to use Discorporate, but you also very much want to cast spells in your opponent's turn. And in a bind, you want to be able to retreat or countercharge if they leave a unit out of combat, like a big unit of horses, right? You're really benefited in a lot of cases. You have a lot of on the charge bonuses. So yes, Discorporate's very powerful, but the usage of the command points is something that I think is going to take a long time for us to really get a feel for what are the most important ones that we use.
I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because I did want to ask you, with the new CP mechanic, as you mentioned, the counter charge, the spell in the opponent's hero phase. There's so many different abilities, right? Like it's hard enough just using the core abilities and knowing what I want to spend my points on. The 5-up ward is strong. It is good.
It's very good.
My question to you through the tournament, or maybe upon reflection post-tournament, is: do you find you got your traditional 4 CP, ignoring underdog, ignoring auxiliary, just let's go 4 CP. How many CP a turn on average do you think you're spending on Discorporate? Is it
at least
1,
one?
2?
At least one. Yeah. I think it depends on the turn and the state of the situation, but I'm at least using 1 Discorporate every turn. I think I'm almost always using at least 1 cast in my opponent's turn with Nighthaunt as well. So that leaves you with 2,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the
for
key.
the battle round. That's the biggest thing, is that if I'm using 1 Discorporate a turn, then I'm dedicating 2 of my 4 battle round CP. And then if I want to cast a spell in their turn, that's the 3rd one. So now I'm not countercharging. I'm unlikely to all out attack. I'm unlikely to power through, right? There's one more thing that I can do.
And this goes back to the decision and, analysis paralysis. Like, have an idea. It is good, but if you know the volume is going to be okay, and remembering being able to ignore rend, there'll be times where you're like, you know what, I'm just going to let the shooting attack go through. It's shorter ranges, maybe not as powerful. Yep. Yes, the 5-up ward will save a couple of bodies, but actually the CP in hand is worth far more in all-out attack. Into power
and
through.
A good way to think about it is if the unit on the board feels inconsequential, they're standing in the middle of no man's land, there's 10 of them already, this is definitely not going to wipe that unit. That's not a Discorporate target, right? The Discorporate target is, are they putting buckets into your unit on an objective, right? Are you contesting to keep an objective? Are you denying a battle tactic if this unit doesn't die, right? Those are the times that you Discorporate, not so that you take a little bit less damage.
And that's the thing, right? It's not, because you've got the base save of 6-up ward, like you'd have to look at the maths. Is it like 16% difference? You'd have to maths hammer it properly. But I think
people do that. I'm sure. I don't.
It's about 16% difference, right? So like 16% difference from going from a 6 to a 5, unless it, as you said, a critical moment. Maybe let it just go through and keep the CP up. I certainly have burnt too many CP early on, and then I'm like, man, I wish I had a CP for X.
Right.
Battle formations. We've got 4 of them. Without going through and doing story time with Coach, what are your favorites, top to bottom? Unfortunately, there's like 1 or 2 that I just keep seeing over and over and over again. And I think partially it is to do with the fact that there are some units that are needing to be toned down a little. But how do you see these?
I'll blast through these real quick.
Take your time, but just
okay, right.
Where they stand.
Procession of Death, I think, is a really fun one if you're a black coach enthusiast, right? There's a lot of black coaches out there, and for a long time, Nighthaunt players did not get to use their black coach. So for those folks, I love that this exists for you, but this is probably one of the worst ones. We just talked about how I can give a 5-up ward. Right. We talked about how there's a little hero you can take with a 5-up ward. This is really restrictive. And again, I love that you can play the black coach and do a fun little infantry hero, big model black coach bubbles kind of a thing. But I think, from a strength perspective, not the greatest. From a fun perspective and thematic, it's awesome. Like processions of black coaches with infantry, I love it, but not my favorite. The Vanishing Phantasms basically lets you pick a Nighthaunt unit that's not in combat and teleport them outside of 9. No cheesy anything, but teleport in this game can be very, very powerful, right? So there's a couple, or there's a main unit in the army, the Dreadblade Harrow, that does it on his own, and right now he's probably doing it twice as often as he should. But in a world where that doesn't exist anymore, something like this could be really beneficial to just let any of your guys pick up and be on the, all of your units are tree revs now if you want. That's pretty awesome. I support that. Hunters of the Accursed, I think, is going to be for that like hero hammer type deal that you were alluding to earlier, Coach. Like if you wanted to go, 4 or 5 drops, a lot of the small little heroes to be, but having options for that strike last. This is where Hunters of the Accursed is going to come in. The only weird thing about that is right now, as always with Sigmar, because of the structure for how do we pick first player, it's kind of a race to the bottom with who can have the fewest heroes. So this says I can pick up to 3 within 12, but a lot of times there's 1 or 2 heroes, right? And then 1 way off on the other side of the board or something. So what's holding this one back, I think, is that race to the bottom as far as army construction and the importance that heroes take, and the downside that comes with taking a bunch of heroes. So that's what's holding Hunters of the Accursed up. And then last but not least, there's Deathstalkers, and it's very, very good. We spoke earlier about how they no longer retreat and charge. Well, this subfaction now allows all Nighthaunt to not only retreat and charge, but also run and charge. So every unit, no matter what, if you take Deathstalkers, including your Wave of Terror, you now have run and charge, retreat and charge, and charge in combat. So every trick, every pickle that you could positioning wise you could find yourself in, you can likely get out of that position. It's kind of uncanny how powerful Deathstalkers is. When you heard the minor criticism of the other three, where I said, yeah, there's definitely play with these other three. They have these drawbacks because XYZ, right? Deathstalkers, I can't think of a single drawback. I can retreat and charge now. I can run and charge, and I no longer take damage when I retreat and charge. Hell, I think that you could get rid of the no damage bit, and this would still be really, really good. If I was just allowed to retreat and charge, but I still took damage when I left, I think I'd probably still do it, because then this thing just says sometimes I retreat, and most of the time I run and charge. So, I mean, again, this could be a lever that they pull, because I think there's definitely a bigger case for some of these other ones if there was retreat damage, or if this was D3 Nighthaunt units can do something like this, right? Something on this one, a lever of some kind, we could see that in the future. But as it stands right now, this subfaction right here, when you heard me say Nighthaunt was breaking the game and the rules, it's this subfaction that's doing that. It's a problem right now, like you said, because most lists you're seeing are just this.
I can't justify it. Like, if I was building a Nighthaunt, and I do have a lot of Nighthaunt units, I truly do. It's one of the many armies that I want to build. I've got a really nice, like, blood theme that I've stolen from Tyler Mengler. Check out my Twitter or whatever. If you,
Yeah.
I love the color scheme, and I have so many Nighthaunt models to use. And if I was going to go to a tournament and play with Nighthaunt, Deathstalkers is just the obvious number one. And that pains me, because I look at Vanishing. That's a good rule. Having the teleporting rule is really good. Procession, if Procession was wholly 12 inches, I think it would be much more beneficial, because I don't want to spam black coaches. I'd like to just have one. Just one black coach, and it acts like a Hurricanum in Cities of Sigmar. It's like a moving forward little castle, and then I can go spread out and do my thing. But wholly within 6 inches is restrictive, but it will allow you to bring up certain units up the board and take less damage. But is it worth, again, we just talked about the 6 to a 5. Is it actually worth that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'd like to see that as a 4-up. Keep it 6 inches, make it a really good ward. I've got to hug and be tight, but I'm really benefiting from it, you know?
One of the two. Make it 12 inches and keep the 5, or make it a 4-up ward if it's within 6 inches. Because in infantry, yes, infantry is also your minor heroes, but it's not that game breaking. I can't.
Well, but see, with the heroes,
crazy.
if I put the spirit hosts just within combat range of them, I have the 4-up ward. So yeah, I don't think that it would be. I don't think that it would be busted. If that was the only change, I'd still be taking Deathstalkers every time. So
yeah. And you know, maybe if Hunters was pick, yes, currently in the current meta, people are doing like how low can you go? If it was like 3 units,
right?
But again, like, it just feels like Deathstalkers is just the easy one. It's just
And maybe I'm wrong with this, but what I would like with Hunters is if I had 3 heroes, if I could pick the same hero with all 3, if I met the condition, right? So I'm not punished because you have few heroes. I'm rewarded because I'm taking more, right? I know it's a slippery slope, but it would definitely make the downside of that one far less. And again, it wouldn't be my first choice, you know, even if it did that. So.
Yeah, look, Deathstalkers clearly is. So my top list would be Deathstalkers, Vanishing, Procession, Hunters. That's how I'd rate the 4.
That seems fair. Yeah. And also, it's probably worth noting, at least for Hunters and Procession, they are dictating a bit more of your army construction, or at least your hero construction from the get-go. Whereas Deathstalkers and Vanishing, you're going to have a little bit more free play with that. You know, you can take your pet units, you can take your favorite stuff, and still have full benefit from those. Where Hunters and Procession, you want a little bit more heroes or, you know, a black coach. So
Yeah, and the black coach currently is 260, so that's almost a 300-point tax that you need to consider, let alone if you were going to run multiple of them, then you're in the 500 territory.
right.
But if I'm running 2 black coaches, my gosh, that would be pretty cool. I remember there was a tournament I went to
You'd
a
feel
couple of
real
years
good.
ago. I think they ran 3 black coaches and maybe there was a Mega Gargan. I can't remember. There was like a Super Chad, multiple black
Yeah,
coaches, and he was a hero.
that's awesome. Like I said,
Of the,
they're beautiful. I'm so glad that people can do that, and it's not terrible to be putting the black coach on the table. And if you take that sub faction because you really love it and you want to do that, then I think that you're not making incredible mistakes. You know what I mean? So I like that for Nighthaunt.
So not only do we have Discorporation, I'm making up words.
That's okay.
Taking up one of your CP, we also have your heroic traits, and one of them is also a CP utilization. So, of the 3 from Ruler of Spectral Host, the Cloak in Shadows, and your Terrifying Entities, again, how do we rank them, and what do we like and what do we don't like?
Yeah.
I think I've got my view. I'm curious to hear what yours is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Terrifying Entity is going to be a weirdly tough one to use because I think that the case that I see this happening is if it's on like specifically a Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed and he makes the charge and then he gives strike last and the -1 to save. And I'm questioning how we get to that scenario where things are not going terribly wrong for you if you need him to be procking those, because there's only one more that you need to proc. And if you're sending in that hero, because I think he's the only one that's because you're not going to be more and give him strike last as a single hero. So I'm kind of confused exactly the application that I want to use Terrifying Entity. It doesn't line up to me. So for that reason, I'm out. Right.
On a pause you for a second. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dragon's Den Mason. I'm out. All right, settle down.
Right.
I really like Terrifying Entity. My problem is I don't have a unit to put it on.
Yeah.
If there was the right unit, if there was that 10 wound, 12 wound hero that was a little bit more customizable, like it's obviously not a named hero like half of the ones that are in your army, and was a bit more of a combat weapon, I think Terrifying Entity is perfect. But like when I look at your hero choices, I'm struggling to find that right hero that I do want to do 2 of them on.
I think it's worth mentioning though that even if you had a hero that had 20 wounds, right? Terrifying Entity, if it doesn't have War Machine or Cavalry, then there's only one wave of terror. I mean, there's only one aura of dread that hero can give. It's the strike last. So it has to go. This has to go on someone that has War Machine or Cavalry.
So it's Alrich. If we could customize Alrich, which has both as a hero and a War Machine,
yeah,
perfect.
right.
But we can't. That's the problem. There's just no
it's
unit that lets
just
me
the
do
Knight of
it.
Shrouds on Ethereal Steed. I really think he's the only one that you could put this on.
Or if Terrifying Entity allowed you to do the other 2 without and break the conditions, like
Oh, I'd love that. That would be awesome.
You know what I mean? Like I like what it says. I like it. It's just there's nothing that I can put it on. So
right.
For me, it's like maybe the battle tome brings me some more rules, like more units. But right now, I like it. Just the wrong time.
Yeah, or maybe if it had the verbiage so that I could do a second one and I could do that second one even if I've already done it, right? So that the hero could go in and apply strike last and a second -1 to save. Then I'm on board. Okay, I've only got one person still I can put it on realistically, but okay, now we're talking, right? Another -1 to save unit. Okay. Okay. But yeah, as it stands right now, it's weird. It just doesn't quite fit, you know. Cloaked in Shadows, not bad. If the unmodified hit of an attack is a 1 through 3, it fails and the sequence ends. The weird thing though is like by and large the game went to 4s to hit. You know? Like tons of stuff is on 4s to hit. Most companion weapons, all mount weapons are almost on 5s now. So I would have liked to see this 1 through 4. it's cool, right? There are some stuff that hits on 2s and 3s. And we're already tanky. We talked about how you can get wards from a multitude of things above the 6-up. We've got the ethereal save. So yeah, shaving off any more attacks is going to be beneficial on a hero you really need to keep alive. I just don't think that it's actually buying me that much health in the grand scheme of things over the course of the game, because the heroes that are going to take it are not going to be hopefully not getting into combat on the first turn. And they're probably not getting shot. So again, I feel like this one misses the mark slightly, because it's just not actually going to protect that much.
If this was 3rd edition, where I could take a Warlord battalion and get a second heroic trait or artifact or some type of thing, Cloaked in Shadows would be good.
Yep, exactly.
But the fact that Ruler of the Spectral Hosts exists, and you
Yeah.
look at that, and you're reminded that your army is based around infantry and troops, not heroes, and then you read those rules, it becomes a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to have some big grapefruits not to pick Ruler of the Spectral Hosts, because you're building around unique heroes and black coaches.
Yeah.
My black coach army and Alinda or Reichner or whatever goes off and be free. That's when I don't use Ruler of the Spectral Hosts. In every other list, it's Ruler. It's Ruler. It's Ruler.
Absolutely.
Bringing back models and being able to commit those chain rust, for example, or those hex raids or whatever it is, get them up the board, trade up really well, and then having the guarantee that you can bring them back across the board.
Yeah.
Is worth too much. It
is.
When I say worth too much, it's just too valuable.
Yeah, especially when you put them on the same scale as the other two. It far and away surpasses them. It does cost you CP. We've talked a couple of times about how few of those we have over the course of the game. This one's by far worth it. It's actually one of the few once per battle artifacts that, like, you even give the time of day, right? A lot of times once per battle artifacts are like a laughable thing. Oh, you got +1 attack for your lance attacks for this combat or something. A lot of times you're not taking them, but this one is very impactful, especially when you're bringing back, like you said, half of a reinforced unit of Bladegeist Revenants or 5 cav units. This here is actively buying you like at least 150 points, if not like closer to 200 points flat out.
If you're telling me that I can bring back, I reinforce a unit of Dreadside Harridans, which is a unit size of 20 when they're reinforced, or if I go with Hex Raids or Spirit Hosts, and then I can bring them back at half strength, that's money in the bank.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. It is by far and away the best one. It's what I used at the tournament. Unfortunately, along with Deathstalkers, it's what you're seeing right now. It is the pick.
Yeah, look, it's good. It's good. I don't think it's like busted good. It's just I just don't think that Cloaked in Shadows and Terrifying Entity are challenging it. Like, it's just a clear winner. It's not busted, because like Stormcast can bring back a unit at half strength. That's busted. I can bring back 4 dragons into 2 dragons for 1 CP.
Right.
Now that is good. But this is good.
It's great.
But it's just that the other two aren't challenging the throne. Like, this is just an easy pick.
Absolutely. This is not something where I think any levers need to be pulled in a downward trend. If anything, I'd like to see, it ramped up. And that's hopefully kind of what we alluded to. Hopefully the book takes stuff like that and it pushes that envelope and keeps the identity of what the index is. But yeah, for right now, you're a Ruler of the Spectral Hosts. Yep.
And mentally, I'm thinking about that reinforced unit. So whether it is, Dreadside, whether it's, whatever it is, like, obviously you can't reinforce your prior guys, but otherwise, like,
and if you remember to the aura of dread, you're encouraged to at least have one of the reinforced units. So there's no reason not to.
Bingo, double benefit.
Yep.
Of your 3 relics of the underworld artifacts, again, where do you think these land?
Okay. Soulfire Ring probably being the weakest of them. there a couple of heroes basically have something like this caked in. The Knight of Shrouds, they no longer gain extra health as they kill stuff, they just heal in a similar fashion to what the Soulfire Ring here would do. So there's few and far between heroes that that I want to put this on. Kind of like what you alluded to earlier, actually. If I could take a second one, Soulfire Ring would be a great second one, right? Put that on the Lord Executioner that does -1 attack and the bigger ward save. Now we're talking, you know. But as my first choice, can't do it.
Exactly what I was thinking. Lord Executioner, second artifact, I'm all in for it. But right now, there's no way to get an extra artifact, so it's put it on the fence, not just yet.
Yep. I'll talk next about the one that I took and the one that is very powerful. Again, a once per battle ability, but really pays off, especially if you are kind of doing a full send moment, either alpha or mid game. But it's a once per game that you trigger, and all Nighthaunt units wholly within 12 of the bearer get +1 attack characteristics. So really powerful. Still not going to apply to companion weapons, but if you can make your unit of 20 Blade Guys Revenants on the charge go from 2 attacks to 4 attacks because they get +1 for charge and this, that's really spicy. If your Hex Race on the charge for 2 damage get 3 Scythe attacks instead of 2, really good. Dread Scythe Harridans going from 3 to 4, great, right? So +1 attack characteristic when you have that many models is quite powerful, and it can trigger multiple units. So the nice, you know, on multiple occasions I had it on the Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed. I would put him in the middle and have a unit on either side of him when I was doing that full send moment, so that I had you know, I was double dipping off of the buff aura. So really, really powerful. And then that Covetous Familiar, I had a Nighthaunt mirror match twice, the same opponent at the tournament, and he was using this, and I really did like it. It was a very cute thing. Basically, if your opponent declares a fight ability with this unit, you roll a D3 on a 2-up, they take that many mortals. So when you've got that Lord Executioner or those small heroes that you want to protect, you could potentially leave them in a slightly more vulnerable position, because there's an even further deterrent from your opponent wanting to punch that hero now if they're holding that Covetous Familiar.
Yeah, I would probably go Light Shard 1, Covetous 2nd, Soulfire 3rd. The reason for it is I don't like the D3 2-up, so I'm looking for a 3-up. There's just too many failure points, and at least maybe I've been burnt by that 2-up too many times, because it's not a natural 2-up, it's really a 3-up, where I'd rather, if I'm setting up those bunch of charges, have the charges trigger the +1 attack characteristic. I've sent that wave of just undead, and
exactly.
Just
it's
do
a
the damage.
force. It's a force multiplier kind of artifact.
Even Grimghast Reapers, like, that'll go to 3 attacks a piece, right? You know, anti-infantry, crit auto wounds, like,
right.
You know,
put a Karen Wraith near them, they've got another attack. You know, boom.
Yeah, like there's a lot of that for me. Light Shard is the clear winner. Though, to your point, you know, you could play quite defensively with the Covetous Familiar, knowing the Strike Last ability and knowing that if they go into and declare a fight ability against it, it's going to be taking potentially D3 mortal damage.
Well,
so
let me paint this picture just real quick. Let's say you have the Lord Executioner, you put the Covetous Familiar on him, you bodyguard him with a unit of 20 Blade Geist Revenants, and they move as a power team, right? And maybe he's your general in this instance. Now he's got the bodyguard ability to give -1 attack characteristic. On a 2-up, he does -1 attack characteristic. He's got the 5-up ward naturally. Now anytime they do want to fight him, because you're going to force them to, on a 3-up, they're taking 2 or 3 mortal wounds. I think in a scenario like that, I really do like Covetous Familiar, but we kind of just painted a picture that's more dedication than anything it's going to take for Light Shard. So
you're all in. That's the thing. That's the thing. You're going all in. Where Light Shard, you don't need to go all in. It's like, right, okay, how do I just maximize that attack sequence? But for Covetous, you've really got to go all in, because you don't have that durable hero that can sit there and just keep tanking. Because, like, against certain units, or like elite units or heroes, cool, I'll take the D3, but there's probably a really good chance that I will delete that Lord Executioner if I have the right attack profile.
Yeah. And another thing, doesn't go without saying to think about the mental load of playing armies like this and playing GTs and, playing this brand new edition. Having something you just remember you need to do one time when you do it and then not have to worry about it again cannot be unsaid. So it is freeing to know that, okay, I did my thing. It was rewarding, or maybe it didn't pan out, but either way, it's done now. So
the amount of times I used to forget my triumph, let alone something like just had to make a little card, like use your
Yeah,
triumph, use your warlord CP, because you always forget it in a thick of
everybody
battle.
forgot it. Yep.
This, just use it, bang, done, or +1 attack, you're probably dead, hopefully. And let's just continue on. Let's just grind the rest of this out. You got good spells too. Again, this goes back to my early comment. Like, this book is good. You got good units. You got good abilities. You've got good spells. Of the 3 spells, because you don't have to pick them, but rather more importantly, which ones were you finding yourself using more than others, or was there particular situations where this spell got you out of trouble, or paint the picture of like how you would use these spells or did use them?
The really good spell lore. I used all 3 multiple times. Spectral Lure probably got used the least, but it was the most clutch when it came in handy, right? Because I have the ability to cast spells on your turn, my opponent would sometimes say, okay, I'm going to kill a unit in the General's Regiment. I'll pick the Dreadsight or the unit of Blade Guy's Revenants. There's only 9 left or something like that, right? I say, okay, cool. After you're done, I'll do Spectral Lure. Boom, I spiked. I brought 5 of them back. Now I was back up to 14. I gave them Discorporate. I used the CP to redeploy to make the charge even farther. All of these things in an effort to deny that battle tactic, right? So for instances like that, something like Spectral Lure becomes really good, right? In the same vein, Spirit Drain, the horde clearing spell, if you will, I often would use that in my opponent's turn as well. They would use Rally and get back a couple of models to their unit of 20 or whatever, and continue on, and then I would Spirit Drain and take out 6 of them, with the horde clearing spell. So it is 18 inches. Most horde clearing spells are 18 inches on a 7 on 5s. It's a pretty universal thing, and this one just happens to be ours. But really good, especially when we're talking about people want to go low drops. That means spend those points, you're reinforcing your units. So this is I think horde clearing overall is getting just more value right now because of a bigger inclination to reinforce units. So I really like that one. And of course, Shade Mist being your unlimited spell. I was doing that one probably at least once a turn on whatever unit I was going to be sending the most, and that's a weird concept to think about, but whatever one I was like pushing into the thick of it, I would try to get the -1 to wound on. It does, it does also benefit in the shooting phase. So it's -1 to wound in shooting and in combat. So that is pretty nice. So in a pinch, if they're a big shooting army, you could always do your unleash spell and do this in their turn. So all of these actually have a lot of play in their turn and in your turn. There was a time where I cast Spectral Lure in my turn to bring my General's Regiment Hexwraith unit from 4 back up to 6 because I spiked to the 6 on the revive roll. That's really powerful, right? I mean, you don't want to bank on those, but it's nice when you have all of these spell options and every one has merit.
Yeah, all 3 of them are good. I mean, you can double down with Spirit Drain and, some of the endless spells like Gravetide, or you could choose a different endless spell lore altogether. And I think literally the next slide is the Nighthaunt endless spells, and if you're like, look, I don't want to take Gravetide. I want to keep with my Nighthaunt theme. You've still got Spirit Drain to deal with the hordes, or as we said, double down and do both. But Shade Mist is so good, and Spectral Lore, as you said, wonderful denier and just does some great things. So all 3 of them, I can see just picking the right spell at the right time.
Yep, it's definitely lovely to have this. And then if you did go caster heavy, you're probably looking at 3 different casters. Being able to Shade Mist 3 times is very good. -1 to wound is a really good buff.
How many casters do you think you should have at least? 2?
That's a tough one, right? I think it does really depend, but I think that you want to try to have at least 2 casts if you can. whether or not that's 2 separate casters or a 2-cast wizard. I think there could be argument about that. My list, I only ran Reichnor, who's a 1-cast wizard but can make himself a 2-cast wizard. But I loved the idea of also having Lady Olinder, so I could have 4 casts. Endless spells are a major part of this game now, right? We could talk about power level. We could talk about, adjustments that need to be made. But by and large, even if the best one wasn't the best one, endless spells in general are incredibly important now. So having wizards, it's almost more important to have wizards right now than it was in the Blizzard meta. So it's kind of interesting.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So let's talk manifestations right now. There are a lot of good universal ones. Primal is a good one. Morbid Conjurations is an excellent one.
Yeah.
Cronspine people are taking off. There's obviously a lot of good, universal ones.
Yeah.
But when we look at the Nighthaunt ones, the ones that are unique to you, how do you see them, and is there strengths to taking this over Morbid Conjuration, Primal, Twillet, Aether Wrought?
Yeah. I think that these are lacking right now. I think that most armies' endless spells are not up to snuff with the generic ones. There are some frontrunners, Morbid Conjuration, being the penultimate probably right now, and then Cronspine and Primal being under that. And then if you want a more utility based one, then it's a different conversation. But all of those feel better than honestly most of the faction ones in my assessment right now. Sans OBR's got the -1 ward save thing is awesome. But with these guys here, it's interesting, right? Because I look at the Terminexus and I think, okay, you used to deal a bucket of damage. Like, you just used to be a huge damage battery, and now it's +1 to run and charge and or heal, right? And Nighthaunt doesn't actually have too many ways to heal the heroes outside of rally now. There's a lot of bring models back between the revive at half strength, that spell we just saw, Lady Olinder's once per game situation, but none of them actually say the word heal. So the heroes are kind of left in the dust when it comes to that. So you could utilize the Terminexus for the heal bit, but at the same vein, I think that if I wanted to do something like that, I might look at that primal energy and just take the life swarm. Yeah, because then I have burning skull, which is got a shooting attack, and then I've got jaws, which is just incredibly survivable and moves far and does great damage, right? So you've got that. The scythe, the scythe reaper. Shaiish Reaper, man, it had the potential to be really good. I wish I would have given it 3 attacks, right? Then if it has 3 attacks on 3s and 2s, Ren 2 4 damage, and it gets +2 if it charged, right? Then I'm like, ooh, okay, I take this, right? Because this thing now rivals Cronspine in output, but not in survivability, and only really beneficial in the charge. And then I've got a couple of others that have some fringe use case, but really I'm taking this for the Reaper. As it stands right now, yeah, it is cute, and it could potentially spike and deal some of the most damage of your whole book. But you need a lot of things to happen. And because endless spells don't move the turn that they come out, you now need it to live, and it's apparent and obvious to your opponent that it's a threat, and you needed to summon it in front of you to be close to them, so it's an even more obvious target. There's just a lot of things working against it to make it the power pick for me here. And then the Vault of Souls, I think, just has, because of the restriction of within 6, I think it's just limiting in the kind of the same way we talked about with the Black Coach.
I don't hate this endless spell lore. I want to put Morbid Conjuration aside because it is strong. And if I asked every faction, which one would you pick? Morbid Conjuration would be the most popular one, and it's nothing to do with the Nighthaunt endless spells. I want to put it to the side for a second.
Yeah,
I actually don't mind this. I don't mind it. I think you're being a bit harsh on the Reaper because you compared it to the Cronspine. But guess what? The Cronspine's a casting value of 8. It's also the only endless spell in that manifestation lore. So And it hits on 4s, wounds on 2s. It doesn't do 4 damage. You're right in regards to the fact that the 1 attack or the 3 attacks if it charges. So there's definitely a consistency issue. And because it only has 7 health, if you target it, and most smart generals would see this on the table and try to remove it ASAP, cover fire comes in, you just want to get rid of this because it will do damage. 3s, 2s, Ren 2, 4 damage. That's nasty.
Yeah. And it is fair to shout that here that I didn't mention before us, all of these have a 4-up save. And even in Morbid Conjuration, which was the one we set aside and give all the praise, they do not have a 4-up save, These aren't ethereal like my army. That would be cute, right? But even without that, that's actually a pretty good save characteristic. Like with the Reaper, a 4-up save on 7 health with the 6-up ward. Yeah, they want to target it, but I guess to give it some credit, they're going to have to dedicate some serious firepower if they really do want to kill it.
And if they're using cover fire to get rid of it, it's -1 to shooting attacks unless there's some type of benefit, which very little do. They've got to save a 4-up. They're quite durable. The 6-up ward. So you're right. Like they're quite durable and tanky. But to your point, do I take Primal over this? I personally probably pick Primal unless there was a really good reason. I'm putting Conjuration to the side. Like I'm just Purple Sun, Shackles, and Gravetide. Even stupid, what's it called? Maelstrom. Like all 4 of them are really good. Like put them to the side. They're very, very
Just
good.
break them up.
Like the Vault of Souls is probably the one that stands out to me the least.
Yeah.
But if I was a Nighthaunt player and I took this manifestation law, I'd probably use the Terminexus and the Reaper probably often. It's not a bad choice. I think there's also good other choices outside.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the major consideration also is that regardless of which manifestation lore you want, you're probably only going to get like one of them to cast each turn, because we just talked about we've got a great spell lore that I want to be utilizing. The casters that you see in the list, Reichnor and Lady Olinder, have great War Scroll spells. Yeah, it's nothing to scoff at. So you do want the manifestations that you choose to take and the ones you choose to put out on the table to maximize their impact, because it is at the cost of some other powerful spells that you do have access to. But I agree. I think this is that, I think I probably was a little harsh that these don't seem awful.
No, like when you compare them to Morbid, I don't think anyone compares. That's the thing. Like nobody compares to Morbid right now. So I want to assume again in a world that's toned down a little bit, this is not a bad. If you were a Nighthaunt player and you took this, it's not a bad choice. I guess the question is, how do you make the most of it? Because maybe you go into Aetherwrought and you use Chronomatic Cogs, instead of the Terminexus, and what does that offer you? I guess there's so many good options, and ultimately, like, what are you building around?
Right.
But I think you made some really good call outs, and I don't think it's an automatic yes or an automatic no. It's just what suits you the best.
Yep.
But the Vault, like,
yeah. +1 run and charge if you're running and charging is basically +2, right? So that's nice.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah,
not bad at all. I'll tell you what's also not bad. The units available. Ignore the Scriptum Orders. I just want to give shout out to the Scriptum Orders. You're not terrible. I love you, mate.
Yeah,
he's so good. It is very nice art. So talk to me about units, man. I'm going to bring up some War Scrolls in a second, but I want you to guide me through some of the ones that really stand out for you. And yes, we've talked already some of these names, right? We've talked about the Hex Rays. We've talked about the Blade Geist. We've talked about Dreadscythe Harridans. We've talked about all right, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Let's talk about our Lord and Savior himself, Nagash. Let's talk Nagash, right? So let's put our Nighthaunt hats on for a second. He's 1,000,000 points. Now, how much is Nagash? He's 880.
880.
So, 880. 18 wounds, 3 up save, control score 10, move 10, got some good attack profiles. He's clearly, Lord Supreme Magic Man himself. Has a bunch of things, +2 to casting, 9 cast wizard.
Just absurd.
To talk to me about, like, when you look at this War Scroll as a Nighthaunt player, do you like it? Is it trash? Do you build it? What does it look like? Talk me through.
Yeah, so I know I joked earlier about like Nagash being playable or not playable, but he is actually very good, right? Um, in a world where we're trying to reduce our drops, Nagash looks awesome, right? When he's close to half an army in a single drop by himself, that's a world where we could be in one drop maybe if we're taking Nagash. So with that in mind, he's awesome, right? He's got a once per game basically for free in your hero phase to replace an entire unit with the Supreme Lord of the Undead. When I played it, I did one test game with Nagash Nighthaunt before the US Open. I played it and I brought back the unit at half strength because I assumed, of course, you always bring them back at half strength. No, you bring them back at full strength. It's so awesome for free, right? Once per game, have that whole 10 hex race back, have all 20 Blade Geist Revenants back, have all 10 Blood Knights back if you're Soul Blade Gravelords, right? There's
So it's basically like a 300-point saving, basically, right there. It's
yeah,
like it's like old Alaria, where she can bring in that
exactly.
unit of like that 300 points ish.
Exactly. He's +2 to cast, and he's basically immune to miscasting now. So that's not a fear of you have to have anymore. You just lose the +2 if you miscast. So, you know, sky's the limit on your cast. You're going to throw every endless spell that you've got, regardless of which one you've taken. You're just throwing them all out there. You know what I mean? His endless spell, if you will, the Invocation of Nagash, is unlimited for him, which is a unique thing to him. And it's a 5-up ward that you can give to all of your units. In my test game, I said, you get a 5-up ward, and you get a 5-up ward, and you get a 5-up ward. And then here's all my endless spells, right? So really, really powerful. And if you don't have any more 5-up wards you need, it can bring models back, brings back almost every model that we have, if not up to 3 of them, right? Like either a Hex Wraith at 3 health or the infantry units for 3 of them. Really powerful. Or it can just deal damage to an enemy. So it's got 3 choices, all applicable to Nighthaunt, all very powerful. Cast on a 7, so it's a 5 on it on the dice if you didn't crit miss, right? If you didn't snake eyes. So it's happening all the time. And then he kept Hand of Dust. So eventually, when he does get into combat, you're going to be on both sides of the turn, just rolling Hand of Dust. It's not a spell that you cast anymore. So in my test game with him, he was incredible. He stood in the middle of the board and seized the center, and he cast a bunch of spells, and everything else tabled my opponent. And he was awesome, right? But I got a little down on it because I'm like, man, all he did was cast spells, and he was so good. And he didn't fight. He didn't Hand of Dust, nothing. He didn't do anything. So I didn't feel comfortable taking him to the tournament because I didn't feel like I got to learn where I could be punished by playing a 900-point model, basically. And so there was an internal fear of that. But my gosh, he felt worth it. Just casting spells, just doing there and dominating that phase. You're feeling real good. You struggle into a tech list when you rock up into one of those. He's probably a little bit more casting supremacy to you, but this guy's no slouch in combat. If you look at that profile with the ability, oh, I'm drawing a blank. Scroll to the bottom of the scroll here with the Hand of Dust, right? Yeah.
With the hand does, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like actually you want to do a thing. If you take him in Deathstalkers, he's a Nighthaunt unit, so he's going to run in charge. I think you just kind of throw all these spells, buff up the board, and just send him. Just get him in there and force your opponent to make force yourself to milk all energy, all maximization out of Nagash. I think that's kind of the state you want to be in a drown them in threats kind of a approach, and as opposed to like a sit back traditional just be casting spells. I think you really want to maximize Nagash when you play him and take advantage of all 3 of those facets.
Yeah, I've played against Nagash a few times, not in Nighthaunt, but certainly in like other factions like OBR, and bringing that unit in full strength is really, really good.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, all the things that you've just said, I 100% reinforce. Ultimately, this comes down to big model syndrome. If you are someone who's comfortable running Marathi, Alariel, Nagash, Archaon, a big 600, 800 point hero, then Nagash is great. Some people, they're like, I just don't have enough troops on the board and it makes me feel uncomfortable, and Nagash will never sell it to you. If you run Nagash, I think you do well. And to your point, you've got to be aggressive with him. You can't be super conservative. Has a lot of power here. But to your point as well, it is a lot of your army.
Yeah.
So it's ultimately going to come down to the pilot and not getting it killed, and just
And he's
doing
got good defensive stats, but he is not unkillable. So,
correct.
we've said send him in there, milk that full value that you can, but that does not mean put him into dangerous situations, right? He should be adequately backed up. He should be an additional flank with your reinforced unit that you're hoping is actually going to die first, so you can bring it back at full strength before the Nagash goes down. So yes, get him in there, capitalize on Hand of Dust, get those characters that your opponent has left slightly out of position or within 3 of the infantry line because he's bubble wrapped or something. Look for those opportunities, but don't just send him in alone. He's not going to live that.
Good unit. If you are somebody who wants a centerpiece model and loves the psychological threat that this unit is going to bring to the table, this is good. You could take it to a GT and you do well. Probably 3-2, 4-1. Like, you can do well with Nagash.
Yeah.
But the power really from Nighthaunt comes from your infantry and your cavalry, and that's obviously going to reduce the amount of that's on the table. So for me personally, I probably wouldn't run Nagash, but it's not because it's a bad war scroll. It's just because I would probably prefer more bodies and troops on the board.
Yeah.
Personal preference, though.
Yep, exactly.
Talk about some of your favorite units, and let's talk why and how. And
yeah.
Talk to me.
Like we talked about. Oh, go ahead.
I want to go Alrich because you brought that to the table.
I was just going to say. I was just going to go him. Yeah.
Great minds think alike. Yeah. And I want to get to Lady O as well. Like, I think we deserve Lady O.
Okay, yeah. So Ulrich the Drownder, that attack profile is nothing to write home about, but it's not awful. Ren 2 D3 damage, but it's 4 attacks on 4 3s. It's kind of fine, right? The big thing he's got going for him is his move through the underworld, and it lets Ulrich pick himself and another unit wholly within 12 and lift him up off the board and teleport. We've talked multiple times so far since we've been chatting, Coach, about how good teleporting is. And this guy just gives you another one of those. But again, he breaks a fundamental rule. He lets him and the other guys drop outside of 7 instead of outside of 9. So what this does, in coupled with something like Deathstalkers, is it lets you do some like really cheeky stuff where I can have Ulrich here in a safe zone away from enemies, not taking damage. I can retreat with a unit back to be wholly within 12 range. Ulrich can pick us up, move us to the backfield outside of 7. And because I can retreat and charge, I now need a 7-inch charge into something completely different that maybe I couldn't have gotten to with a normal retreat and charge because of their positioning, because of terrain, because of something like that. That you can totally do that. What you can't do is you cannot retreat Ulrich the Drowner and then do this ability. They're both core movement abilities, so you can't do that. But the unit that's going with Ulrich can retreat because it's just being picked up and carried along for the ride. So if you've played 3rd edition and if you've played Stormcast at all, you definitely know how good dropping in outside of 7 is as opposed to 9, because 7 is the average on our 2d6, where 9 seems to never happen. So for that reason, Ulrich feels really powerful. And he does rock that unique war machine keyword. So as we alluded to earlier, he is somebody who can dish out the -1 to save if he does make that charge.
Yeah, I think that alone, if you're not bringing a black coach, I think the Ulrich, now that he's a hero, right? So that then automatically increases my.
So
yes, I mean, I'm less worried about the name. Obviously, like it does mean that your command trait, an artifact, has to go somewhere else. But the fact that he's a hero is going to mean that you are going to be 1 more drop, and you can't hide this into any of the battalions.
Yeah,
regiments.
He's cheap though at 140. So he's
140.
I believe. Yeah, you could
script and mortis 140. 160.
Okay, 160. My bad.
That's still
good.
That's still very good. What was that? Health of 4, save of health of 7, save of 4, control 2, 6 up ward, fly.
So he's got the air quote better Nighthaunt hero profile as far as health and save stats, right? Yeah, he's great. He's really spicy.
I think why I like him is a couple of things, right? If you like this idea of teleporting around the board, you can double down between the Dreadblade Harrows with the heroic, was it, no, the battle formation.
Yep.
So if you want to be really like manipulating and dancing around the board and stretching your opponent out and just like absolutely dominating the board without having to charge and move, this is going to play mind games for your opponent, and most people do not have the speed to catch you.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if you don't want to take that battle formation, this is going to give you some tricks. And the fact that, to your point, Mason, it's a 7 and not a 9 is huge for charges. It's huge for board control and being able to move around the board a little better, because zoning outside of 9, it can be hard. 7 is very hard to zone. And anyone, as you
imagine
mentioned,
this
who plays
world,
in
right? You've got your 20 Bladegeist Revenants that you're worried because they've got the 3x20 Sentinels, right? You're playing Techless and the bows, and you're scared that units, you can backborder them with Ulrich the Drowner, keep them incredibly safe, and it doesn't matter how far away you are, because now you're 7 inches from the front line, from the back line, from wherever you need to be. So you can also do something kind of fun where you can have Ulrich be a little bit more than 7 away. He can tag a point with no plan to ever go into combat, put the other guys in front, have them charge in, do their damage. Ulrich captured the point for you in the backfield. So there's so much application when you can teleport, and when you're allowed to be that close to combat, your opponent is even kept more honest. I always say teleport and deep strike is good to keep your opponent honest, but when they now have to fear 7 inches instead of 9, they're spread thinner. They have to hold back. They have to be more reserved. Or they will be punished. So he's awesome.
And it's a guarantee. Stormcast players love translocation, but it's a prayer. I've got to go chant that prayer. This is guaranteed. Like that's money in the bank that I know that I can plan out moves, and I can do so many things. You can't take the flanks with it. Unfortunately, you can't set up and steal. But other than that, you feel like you got no battle tactics turn 1. Cool, seize the land, go and steal whatever you need to steal outside of 7. Merry Christmas.
Seize the center. Boom, did it.
Yeah, so good. So good. Agreed. Is it auto include though? Like, do you reckon every Nighthaunt list should have one? Yeah, agreed.
Nope. Not auto include by any means, but never a terrible pick. The reason why I called out the fact that he's a named hero is because Nighthaunt is cursed and blessed with very good named heroes. So your best heroes, in my opinion, and sometimes this happens with lots of factions, but your very best heroes are your named ones: Kurdos, Reichnor, Lady Olinder, Ulrich the Drowner here, right? So those are some of my priority heroes that I want. And so the reason why it's worth the call out is because Ulrich the Drowner feels like a really good third hero, but it's dangerous as a third hero because my first 2 are often named as well.
To be fair, my Stormcast list currently is Indrasa, Krondas, and then I've got the Banner Idiot. So I'm like, cool, you get all the things.
Right.
But yeah, you suffer the same kind of fate that I've got. Talk to me more. What other units?
We can mention Lady O. Yeah.
Let's go to Lady O. She deserves it. Double caster.
I think that it's the best time to be a Lady O fan and player, right? Unfortunately, she's never, to me, felt like somebody that you really want to take, and she's as close to a strong include. Again, I would not say auto include with her, but she's the closest you can be to a very strong inclusion, if like right on the cusp of an auto include, that she's ever been before, because she's got that once per game ability to bring back potentially like 6 models to all your infantry stuff, and it's board wide, is really powerful. It's at least 1 Hex Wraith, if not 2. It's at least 3 of your infantry idiots, if not 6 of them. So that's really powerful. Her grief-stricken ability, I mentioned it earlier. I said the War Scroll spell is really powerful. Just ignore all positive modifiers to hit, wound, and save. So if you were buff stacking your Stormcast Finest Hour, this guy, worked him up with all the 9s, and then I do this: no all-out defense, no bonus, no nothing. So it is an 18-inch range as well, which is pretty good. A lot of ranges are back reduced down to 12, so she's got that going for her. The biggest thing, built-in 4-up ward, right? No other model in this army has a 4-up ward. The spirit host can give it to the other heroes, but then you're investing the points for the bodyguards basically. So it's a little different, but just flat out for a board, really good. The subtract 3 from control score thing that she does, I see it coming into play very infrequently. And when it happens, it will be cute, but it is by no means anything you're actively trying to facilitate. She's just doing a lot of other stuff. And she's no slouch in combat. She's got the crit auto wound on everything. She's still got her veil attack, but it's no longer just flat mortal wounds. But it is run 3 for d6 damage, so it's pretty dang close to mortal wounds.
Until you roll a 1 in that d6. I would have liked if it was I would have liked if it was like d3 plus 3 or something, because
for sure
you get the highs of the 6, but the lows of the 1. Again, it kind of feels like Ulrich, right? Where good inclusion, not an auto pick. Being the double caster, 4-up ward, a bunch of cool abilities, definitely like A or B tier. Like you definitely take her if you feel like this is valuable to you, but like I definitely am not gonna automatically chuck her into a list and build everything around her.
Absolutely. Yep. I was really back and forth between playing her with my open list, and I ultimately decided against it. 300 still is pretty steep, and I don't mean by any means that it's not worth it for her, but it is just really pricey, and it didn't quite align with my goals and my build structure there. But she's no slouch at all. Like I said, it's probably the best time to play her if you've been a Lady Olinda fan. We could talk about Reichnor, who, in my opinion, is probably the closest to an auto include for a hero that we have right now.
That's Kurdos, sorry. Wrong other named hero.
Right. So Reichnor rides a cav, which is really great. He can dole out he's a hero, so he can give out the strike last or the -1 to save with the Wave of Terror is really powerful. He's got an ability where he can poke himself for a mortal wound, and if he does, he becomes a 2-cast wizard and has +1 to cast. Or you can poke an enemy within 12 inches for 1 mortal wound, and you just get the +1 to cast. So in the enemy turn, when I'm going to use Unleash Spell for the command, I'm going to poke an enemy, right? In my turn, I'm usually going to poke myself so that I have the 2 casts and the bonus to cast. Put them next to a place of power, you're now a 2-cast wizard on +2. Right. So that ability to circumvent the negative of casting spells in your opponent's turn by dealing a mortal wound to an enemy within 12 is really awesome. Being able to just poke them like that. Again, also trigger boom. Now in the enemy turn, you're casting on a +1. Right. So really like him for that reason. Really fun War Scroll spell. I commonly against enemies that had bigger hordes, I was using this in junction with the horde clearing spell, where I would do the horde clear and then I'd follow it up with this, and it says deal D3 mortals, and if any models die, do another D3 mortals. So against the 1 health infantry type stuff, I was constantly clearing 4 to 6 models with that. Then, of course, his Grim Justice he's a priest and wizard hunter. So when you have the subfaction for run and charge, retreat and charge, and you're charging in combat, you can really easily pick the targets that you want to be fighting. In particular, he does get +1 to hit and wound against them, which puts him on 2s and 2s. He is also +1 damage on the charge. So when I decided to send Reichnor in, and it's always at my discretion normally, because he's a wizard until he's ready to go in and apply debuffs and be a equalizer or finisher, right? I'd put him in with the unit of 20 or with the 10 horses together. I knew they would drop the wizard hero that I was up against, right? Or together they would take down whatever I needed to. But I would do it when I knew it was going to be safe for me to send both in. I'm giving the -1 to save. I'm giving the strike last. We're going, right? So Reichnor to me feels the closest to an auto include because he has a lot of utility, really powerful spells, and really powerful melee prowess as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because like when you look at Lady Olinda in isolation, you're like, oh, double caster. She, if I want to get a bit of magical supremacy, this is going to really allow me to go up the board, good amount of wounds. 4-up ward is going to make it, relatively durable. I can then, 2-cast, whether it's endless spells, whether it's whatever I need to do, good spell lore. Lady Olinda, go do your thing. 300 points.
Mhm.
Then when you see Reichner currently is 210, so 90 points cheaper. I'm like, okay, cool. Talk to me more. I can get an extra power level and an extra cast value. Makes that Kronspine, that Purple Sun, any of those higher casting value things, or even to your point, you've got some pretty cheap casting value 6, casting value 7 type things. I'm getting more consistency. It's hard to argue a Linda in the board, like other than the 4-up ward. And the
Right.
fact, I mean, like you, as you mentioned, I can tap into more of those auras. I can tap into more spell casting powers. There's a lot of wizards and priests on the board right now because of the free manifestations.
Yep.
Like this War Scroll ticks all the boxes, and I would find it hard not to take Reichner in a list. Like
Yeah.
there's very few reasons that I couldn't justify this in my army.
The only reason that you could justify not taking him is because of how awful and fiddly his wings are on his model. He doesn't always fit. All of those models are real fiddly and spindly, and so that's his biggest downside is he's obnoxious. Just don't play the wings.
For this War Scroll, I will deal with the wings. Like
Right,
this is good. This is very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Like if you flip the points and Alinda was 210 and this was 300, I'd still say this is very fair value.
Yeah, I mean he's
I don't want
fast too, man. 12 inches. He sprints. I'll tell you what, he's great.
That's good. It's good War Scroll.
Yeah,
I
and that
dig it.
Kurdos is the last named one that we could talk about. He's the one I'm the least excited on of the 4. However, it is worth noting that if you can roll 3-ups and you can get your opponent to spend command points for nothing, it's insanely powerful. So he's got one of the best just flat melee profiles at 3/3, Ren 2, 3 flat damage, still has the crit auto wound. But if you look at his reaction, once per turn when an opponent declared a command within 12 inches on a 3-up, they have to spend an additional CP or it has no effect. And it still counts as being used and the command point is still spent. So your opponent goes to redeploy. Okay, 3-up, that'll cost you 2. Would you like to pay 2? No, then you do nothing. Right?
Counter charge goes to 3
Right.
command points.
And it's once per turn, so it's on their side and your side, which is great. So you're going to have 10 opportunities at this. Theoretically, you stop 6, 7, something like that over the course of the turn, or you roll a lot of 1s and 2s and it feels kind of bad. You know what I mean? So this one is a feast or famine, so to speak. It's a little bit of more high risk, high reward, even though a 3-up is pretty semi-reliable. You are really needing that to happen multiple times to milk that full benefit out of him, because I believe he's sitting at like 200 points, so just right under Reichner.
Yeah, currently 200. Currently 200. I mean, it's a good idea. I just don't know if I have the points spare.
Yeah.
To be honest, I just don't know if I have the points spare to have this. Look, shutting down commands is really powerful. Don't get me wrong. We've talked about the value of the CP economy. I just don't know if I have the 200 points for that tool alone.
Yeah. I think there will be some play styles and some folks that really want to lean into this and want to play more of that denial game. And I'm totally here for it. And I see why you're doing it. And I don't fault you at all, but I agree. It's just not quite there for me to be a front runner for me and what I want to do and how I want to play. But I can absolutely see why it would be a consideration and make lists, right?
If you just spend all your points on, again, Chain Rasp, Grimghast, Spirit Hosts, if you just play this, like all these like reinforced troops of infantry and you just like grind it out and you clog up the board, you're hugging the 12 inches around, Kurdos, I think there's a good play style there. But what you're probably seeing right now, because of all the charge stuff, is you're going aggressive, you're going out, you're
Right.
probably spreading out across the board, and you're probably less requiring the bubble.
Yeah. I think that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. And if he saw a little bit of point drops, if he creeps down to 160, 170, it opens up now the unit of Chain Rasps to fill becomes a better infantry unit. If you swap to him or something like that, I can see a world where with just some minor tweaks, he becomes really good, but it's a slippery slope and it's a tough lever to pull because of how impactful the command point thing can be. Most impactful when they've got the one command point left. and they don't have the option. And so now it's okay, I need to do this. And if I cannot be afraid that it will fail because I need it no matter what. And you have the chance to deny it no matter what. So that's when it's going to be most beneficial. And again, I can't be understated how powerful that can be. You just really need it to, you need the luck, you need the, or the skill, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, no. Look, it definitely is not bad. But again, you've got so many great heroes. Like it looks like half. Like I'm just looking at your pitch battle profile.
Yeah,
It's almost like half your unit options are heroes.
right.
So,
I think
it's like you are spoilt for choice. It's just like who is going to fill those slots?
who makes the cut.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a little bit. I mentioned earlier that they, because you have a lot of those heroes, they all have their own group that they go with, right? You've got the Karen Wraith Gas Reapers, you've got the Knight of Shrouds on foot to go with your Dreadscythe Harridans or your Bladegeist Revenants, the Knight of Shrouds on steed to go with your Hex Wraiths. You've got the Tomb Banshee to go with, she goes with the Mirmorns, right? And then we've said a few things about the Lord Executioner and how good he is. And so I think you can kind of bubble all of those guys and you can bundle them up together and say, you're going to flavor your secondary hero selection, if you will, based on what the core of those regiments look like, right? You're going to start, let's just say, Lady Olinder and Reichnor, boom. And you're like, I like Dreadscythe Harridan, so I'm going to put 2 units of 20 and a unit of 10. All right, then I'm going to pick the heroes that are going to buff those guys. And that could have easily been, I'm going to take 2x20 Grimghast Reapers because that's what I've got, and I've got an old school Nighthaunt thing. So I want a couple of Cairn Wraiths to join Lady Olinder and the 20 Grimghast Reapers because that's my flavor that I need for this entree of Nighthaunt selection. So they did a really good job about making them all interchangeable depending on how you've built the structure of your army, right? Or what you own even, a lot of people have the old school Grimghast Reaper type stuff and they're great right now. They get even better, I think, when we shift out of like a cav heavy situation into more of an infantry mode, they become great. So I think all those little heroes, to summarize them, it just depends on what you're taking them to support and you pick the right one.
Yeah, that is critical, and that's probably partially also why Nighthaunt is doing well. Not doing well, obviously a lot of good rules, but cavalry across the game. Like you ask any faction, and there is a heavy reliance. Like I was talking to a friend with Cities of Sigmar. I'm seeing double reinforced cavaliers. I'm seeing Varangard reinforced, not double reinforced. Sorry, 2 units of reinforced.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't mean double reinforced. I mean 2 units of reinforced. But you're seeing it across the board. A lot of people are reinforcing those cavalry units. They're probably undercosted, and you'll probably see cavalry across the board go up because for 3 wounds apiece, where they used to be 2 wounds, I think they're undercosted. And there is clearly, I'm struggling where any cavalry is not overperforming. I'm seeing bloody Cities of Sigmar people using Dark Riders, and they're like, when was the last time you saw Dark Riders on the table?
Right,
like
right.
they are now becoming staples in cities lists. So
yep.
like that's the level of ridiculousness. I want to talk a couple of infantry units, and then I want to go to some of your lists. We've referred to Dreadblade Harrows a few times in the episode. What's the highlight here? And
yeah, they're no slouch in combat.
Include?
You get a unit of 2 of them, right? So you're looking at 8 attacks, 4s, 3s, rend 1, 2 damage. They really did help clean stuff up in the later parts of the game, or when I just need a little bit more oomph. They are cavalry, so in a pinch, they can apply the -1 to save. Of course, the big thing, though, is the Phantasmal Discorporation. Currently, right now, on July 26th of 2024, they can do this in both players' movement phases. What that means is you can never charge them unless I let you charge them, because you'll move outside of 3 and I'll say, cool, are you done? I'll lift these guys up and poop them to the backfield, right? Or I'll put them on the corners on your side. And the reason why that's so powerful is because there's so many battle tactics right now that say you can't do them if you're set up this turn. Well, it doesn't say anything about me being set up last turn on your turn before I got to go, right? So I can put them there on your turn, 15 inches away from all of your stuff, make sure you'll never charge, that you'll never engage with them, and then they're just sitting in the right spot for my tactic, the rest of my army. And this is the most important piece is the rest of my army now continues its one-track mind, which is dominate this space, overwhelm you, pin you in. And I've got Dreadblade Horrors just ping-ponging all over the place, taking objectives, taking battle tactics, taking terrain features, doing whatever I need them to do. It's too much right now. This has to be brought back to just on your turn, and I'd bet money that's exactly what's going to happen, right? Then it's still powerful.
It'll either be your turn only, or you'll be points to oblivion. Like to point that across the board, you're going to see probably a 50-point increase potentially. So one or the other is likely to happen.
Yeah, and I'd bet money that it's just going to be teleport on your turn only, because then it's in line with all the other teleport stuff we've talked about. And yes, it's still great. It's still going to do its thing, but it's going to be far less dominant and mandatory than it feels right now.
Agreed. This is one of the ones where I think that, that stands out to me as one. I know I mentioned earlier in the discussion, Hex Wraiths with their objective control 2 definitely stands out across other cavalry units. So, again, I'm not trying to pinpoint the things that I'm crying about. It's more just if you're looking at these internet lists right now and seeing all the Hex Wraith spams, or the Dreadblade Harrows, or whatever it is being spammed across the board, and you go out and go buy them right now, know that there is a higher risk in that purchase. So if you love them, do it, but have an educated purchase decision, because they're likely to be reined in at some point.
Right. And then when we talk about, the Hex Wraiths are just good. I think we've talked about it. They're good. Don't go buy a ton of them, because ideally they're going to be a little bit weaker. But with the infantry choices, we actually have 3 premier infantry choices here for melee infantry in particular. You've got the Blade Guys Revenants, which you're looking at right here. You've got Grimghast Reapers, which we were looking at just a second ago. And then the Dreadscythe Harridans, which are almost all pointed equally. The Grimghast Reapers are 10 points less than the other two at 140 and then 150, 150 respectively, but they all have their own role that they fill. And that's why I talked about earlier, it really depends on the flavor of the army that you're building and what you like. No longer are you locked into only Dreadscythe Harridans because you want to do that subfaction and ignore wards, or only Blade Guys Revenants because you want to do the Charged Mortals of old, right? There's reason to have all of the different ones. Blade Guys Revenants just are no nonsense. They're going to be 3 attacks a piece, sitting on 3s and 3s base, and so they're better on the charge, right? The Dreadscythe Harridans have the 3 attacks base, but they're on 4s and 4s, and if they charge, they go to 3s and 3s, right? If they're fighting something that's wounded or lost models, they go to 3s and 3s. So you need to set that up with shooting or spells so that you can capitalize on that, but they don't need to have charge to get that bonus. So if they're in combat, they're technically at a better position than the Blade Guys are just standing still. Then you got the Grimghast Reapers that have, if they're going into an infantry unit, they're likely proccing their crit auto wound on 5s instead of 6s, but they also have the anti-infantry 1. So they're the things that's actually going to get to Ren 2, potentially Ren 3 if you put a cav unit for the debuff there. That's some of your best Rens that you can get on the infantry unit. So they all have strengths. They all, I guess, kind of have the same weakness, which is they're just 1 health infantry guys on 32 mils. So it's not that big of a weakness, but they all have their own merit, and it kind of just depends on what you've got. What do you own? What can you field? And then what are you trying to use that unit for on the battlefield? In my list, I had 2 units of 10 Hex Wraiths. Then I had a reinforced block of Blade Guys Revenants. And then I had a unit of 10 Dreadscythe Harridans because they were a different role, but still could really slap if push came to shove. So it's nice that you have all 3 options and they're really equally pointed so that one is not far and away superior than the other.
I'm just looking at Chainrasp versus Grimghast, and for 40 points difference, yes, when you reinforce it, it turns to 80 points. But you pick Grimghast over Chainrasp every single day at that points value.
Yes.
40 points difference, this is sexy war scroll.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I was looking for really cheap chaff that just basically clogs up the board is my first line of defense, Chainrasp with my heart's content.
Yeah.
But either this feels undercosted or Chain Rust feel overcosted, and they should be dropped a little. I don't know what it is.
Chain Rasps are a weird spot where they just fill a hole when you're list building. I found when I was toying with a lot of lists, I end at like 1890 or 1900 with nothing else to add. And so I'm like, okay, this is where Chain Rasps makes sense, right? It fills it in because I don't want to be 100 points under maximum, but it's better than nothing, you know. Like if you're all pigs or all Vanguard and you're gonna alpha, I'll gladly put that out and let you smash into my, you know, my little guys. So they're never a first look, and they're always like a pity ad or a clutch ad at the very end. Like, I guess this fits, and so we sits, right? And that's how it works.
Yeah, but again, you've got a lot of units that are sitting around that 100-point mark. You know, if you've got a little bit extra points, the Spirit Host 130, you know, Grimghast 140, you know, your Harridans, and like there's so many things around that 1 to 140 mark that you're really spot for choice. And
Yep.
I guess it's like, yeah, you built that list and it's just over. Yeah, you bring in the Chain Rasps.
Well, that's where we talked about, like, if you had Lady Olinder in that list and you're just at 100, then maybe you make the concession to go down to Reichnor to open up the 90 points so that you could take, instead of Lady O and Chain Rasp, you're going to take Reichnor and Bladegeist Revenants, right? And so that little swap opportunity right there is probably a more valuable one currently, at least, than the other.
By the way, this document drives me insane. I don't know what order it is.
So high res, man.
It's no, but it's more just like this, like alphabetical order at something. Like it's just,
right.
It's hard to find what war scroll's on what war scroll. 2 more war scrolls, if you don't mind, Mason, and then I want to get into your lists.
Yeah.
First one being our crossbows. I feel like this has been the best time to run crossbows. Like we've tried, it hasn't kind of quite worked for us. I think it's definitely time to revisit them, and I think that there is some merit to consider them in your lists.
Yeah, I love them. They're 100 points for 5, so that's another option if you didn't want the
They're 100 points.
Yeah, 100 points for I took a reinforced unit in my list. One cool thing that's worth calling out is the spectral bolts. They still don't need line of sight, so they can shoot at whatever they want at 16 inches, which is a nice little improvement from before. They wound on 3s now instead of 4s from old, and that's really great. So basically a 24-inch shooting threat range. But the better part is that they ignore negative modifiers to hit during shooting attacks. Now, what this means is that you can return fire at no negative penalty. So when you return fire or formerly unleash hell, you are on 4s and 3s still, not 5s and 3s, right? Or if they have a -1 to hit in shooting, well, you ignore that, you know? So with the crit auto wound, with that consistent profile, it really makes your opponent have to worry about the fact that you could deal, 4, 5, 8 damage sometimes in a return fire and an almost all melee army. So
and guarded hero as well, right? Because the -1 penalty to hit them within if you're within 12. So if you're within 12,
or cover bonus is -1 to hit now too.
True. Yeah. So
there's a lot of reasons why they're really powerful. Another thing that's important that people really underestimated, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but they have 2 attacks each in melee too. So that unit of 10, I move them 6 inches away, I go blasting at something, then I charge them into a hero, into a 5-man unit. They can apply the -1 to hit debuff because they were reinforced, and that's still 20 attacks that are auto wounding. Like, these guys in my mirror match, these guys killed the Lord Executioner that I was faced up against because they just went in and finished off the damage. We talked about how I played Nurgle. These guys remind me a ton of Rotmire Creed, where I've got just as much value really in shooting as I do in melee. Not quite the same, but pretty dang close. And they can just kind of float around and be shooting, but then when the time comes and I need something to go and apply that debuff, that reinforced unit at 200 is there to assist me to do that. So these guys are just big ups for me.
Yeah, they've definitely had a glow up. I like them a lot. I think it's definitely worth considering. Maybe when, again, the craziness kind of goes down a little bit, but
they build real quick too. I built like 2 units of them in, I don't know, an hour.
Maybe the only negative, just to call out to your strategy that you just mentioned, is there's obviously no shooting combat here. So if you're
Right.
doing it, know that you either need to retreat out
Yep.
or you're going to be losing those shooting attacks if you're stuck in combat. But
Yep.
otherwise, yeah, what you've just
One
said is
kind of cute thing you
absolutely
can do
viable.
to if they pin if they engage you to try to make it so you can't shoot, what you can do is you can then retreat and then charge something else to create even further distance away from the threat they were trying to engage you with. Because maybe you have them go join a unit of hex wraiths or blade guys revenant or something that's definitely going to kill its target that's engaged with, created even more distance because you're allowed to retreat and charge, and the ultimate goal of being out of combat at the end is still likely to be met. So so much play you can do with these guys.
They are definitely going to reward the person who, look, there's so many good units. That's the problem. Like, I can look at each of these units, but the one that I finally want to not look at, not you, you're a jerk. My brethren, the black coach himself. Uh, I do want to give a little shout out to the black coach. It's a piece that people love, or they just like indifferent to.
Yeah.
And when you look at the black coach, like it's got a great little utility kind of set. Like it's got shooting, it's got combat, it's got all these tricks in the world, and people love it.
Yeah, yeah, it deals mortals. It throws buckets of attacks. It can revive non-unique Nighthaunt heroes. So your Karen Wraiths, your Lord Executioners, your Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed, things like that. The the Black Coach
Nimbus
can
of
revive them at the end of any turn. So that's pretty cool. They can't keep returning them, but at least once is nice, right? So it lets you be a little bit more fast and loose with those heroes. We talked about the fragility of them potentially by putting them in to do the strike last stuff, but with this you can kind of hedge your bets a little bit and not be punished as much if you get it in there and do a lot of damage but take the retaliation, then you bring these guys back. So if this was coupled with something like Lady Olinder, a few blocks of infantry, a few of those infantry heroes, you're sending those guys in waves, they're dying. Linder is bringing back the infantry, the black coach bringing back the small heroes, really kind of recycling that. There's a lot of play there. And it
well,
does
like a
still have
couple.
its own built-in teleport. You got teleport for days in this army.
Yeah,
So
the teleport is magic, and yeah, like it really plays well to having Lord Executioners and maybe having two of them and just trading them off, bringing them
yep.
back, that recycle piece. So, um, yeah, yeah. Look, some people will look at this, go, there's too many points, and it doesn't do what I need it to do, or it's just utility that I don't need, or they're gonna go, this is great.
Right.
Like it's not automatic. Like it's like Nagash. Like you love it or you're indifferent.
Yeah, exactly. You won't be incredibly punished for bringing it, but it's probably not your most effective use of points presently.
No, and as you said as well with the war machines as well, it does give you a little gives you that war machine piece as well, which is going to help you with your aura of dread.
Yeah,
But you've also got other utility pieces that allow you to tap into that.
I like it. It's huge though. I mean, it hangs off of the base.
Yeah, it's a massive piece. All right, we got 3 lists for you, and then I've got a couple of final questions that will bring things home. First off is the Darrel Braithwaite list 1. Darrel Braithwaite is not a tournament player. It's an Australian songwriter who has an amazing song called Horses. I recommend it. It's a karaoke song of Australia. People who know the song know the song. If you don't, go out and listen to Darrel Braithwaite Horses. This list is dedicated to the horses of the Nighthaunt realm. It is Deathstalkers. You've got Morbid Conjuration, and what is it? It's 2 drops. First one being Reichner with Blade Geists, which are reinforced. Craven Throne Guard reinforced. Dread Scythe Harridans, and then Hex Raids reinforced. Drop number 2 is your Knight of Shrouds on Steed with the Ruler of the Spectral Hosts and Light Shard of the Harvest Moon. 2 units of unreinforced Dreadblade Harrows, and then you've got a unit of Hex Raids reinforced. What's the high level piece? We've talked a lot about horses already.
Yeah.
How's this list work?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've been paying attention in class at all so far, we've kind of hit on all of benefits of this. The biggest takeaway here is that those Dreadblade Harrows do guaranteeing at least 3 battle tactics for you over the course of the game, you know, barring like major investment from your opponent, means the rest of your army can freely full send. Like they can go, they can deny, they can pin, and that's the exact kind of strategy that I like to play. This was the list specifically, point for point, that I took to the Tacoma Open. I only lost in the final to Tom Guan's Soulblight Gravelords 42-40, right? So even in that, in a slugfest, a heavyweight championship bout, right, we're both just doing everything we can, and it comes down to the card at the end, you know, decision. So it checked all of the boxes. I had output, I had survivability, I had tactics. I really like to pin this army and let you go first or second and get away with it. It's really good. It was light on cast. One thing, like going into the last day, there's 4 undefeateds. I'm definitely the lowest caster potential compared to all of the other undefeated armies, being Soulblight, Slaanesh, Seraphon, and myself at going into the final day of the tournament. But I didn't feel like I was underpowered or outgunned by any means, you know? So I made concessions to be a 2-drop because I valued that choice. Doesn't mean you're always going first, doesn't mean you're always going second, but I like to be able to decide. And the reason why is because people make a lot of mistakes in deployment. And so I like to be able to capitalize and try to like secure this game as quick as possible. And sometimes that means giving away first and doubling them right into 2. If you know, having that opportunity, even with the penalty now, if you table them, you're going to win still. So, yeah, I think that this was about as powerful as I could have put together a list with the current state of the rules and points. I could see an argument for not playing the Craven Throne Guard. But I really liked them. They set up for the Dread Scythe Harridans to apply that buff. It keeps people honest, like I talked about with Deep Strike. It keeps people honest with their positioning to worry about the shooting. And I can't tell you how many people were like afraid of the shooting enough to make movement concessions that were terrible decisions, you know, because to me, the shooting is extra. These are 10 bodies to hang back. They're doing their thing and just peppering you. But if you're afraid of that unit, man, that's a win for me. So I could see an argument for switching that piece up. That's kind of like your flex spot, if you will, right now. And then let's assume we see some point changes and some changes to the Dreadblade Heroes. You probably cut 1 unit of those, and that's 160 points. And then the list can probably stay the same. I think that's a reasonable assessment for a points increase, that this would go up 160 in total. Anything more than that would actually kind of feel like a lot. But if it's just point increases and not any of the rule stuff we talked about, then that maybe. But I expect the Blade Horrors to adjust, and maybe there's a world where we just go more in on bodies and we forego the Dreadblade Horrors, and then I just have guys that are just running to do the role that the Dreadblade Horrors did before. So there's opportunity there as well.
Or that's where like your Alrach and some of the other teleporty shenanigan comes into play.
Yeah,
potentially.
same cost, right? Just you go to a higher drop count. That would be the concession.
Which, you know, for some people that's like a non-negotiable. Like, no, I need to be 2 drops. For some others, like, yeah, 3 or 4. I don't mind too much.
Right.
It depends on your risk tolerance.
Yep.
Second list is Spooky Dad. Similar, we've got the Deathstalkers. We've got the Morbid Conjuration. So there's a bit of a theme going on. But we have the big bone booty daddy himself, Nagash, Supreme Lord of the Undead, who's the general, has to be. It's a War Master. You've got your Blade Geist Revenants who are reinforced. You then have another drop. So it's still a 2-drop list. One being very similar. You've still got the Knight of Shrouds. You've got, you know, your Ruler. You've got your Light Shard. But you've got 2 units of Hex Wraiths. So this is, and they're both reinforced. Yeah. This is light on bodies. But you would expect that with Nagash being, you know, 880.
Exactly. So I think I mentioned this towards the beginning, but I did get 1 test game with Nighthaunt ahead of the US Open, and I tested this list right here. And if, like you called out, the core identity of this list, right? Like 1,120 points of it really are identical to the one that we just saw. But the difference was, do I want supremacy over the casting game and something like Nagash, or do I want all of that extra goodies like the crossbows, the extra unit of Harridans, the 2 unit of Dreadblade Harrows, right? Do I want to guarantee points and tactics, or do I want to play Bone Daddy and run that hero phase? And so in my test game, what this showed me was, yeah, Nagash is super powerful, but that core, that 1100 point core that I had, that showed me everything that I needed, right? That did the bulk of the heavy lifting. And so then I just reevaluated and said, okay, what's going to guarantee me extra points that's just going to dance around and play solitaire while me and my opponent play the rest of the game with, 2/3 of my army. And so that's kind of where I went from this to land on the list that I ended up taking. The previous one we just saw, I just replaced Nagash for all the goodies, and it felt like the right call for something like that. Again, I think this is, for the time being, this is kind of where you want to be with Nagash. You have 3 reinforced units, and the goal there is that you want to have choice on whatever one they completely wipe first. You're going to get full benefit for bringing it back. So you're never put in a situation where you feel like you need to use it or lose it with Nagash, and you have to bring back like a small unit or something. You want to try to get maximum value out of that. And so this list tries to lend yourself towards that. And the Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed, again, is just kind of one of the best guys to take the artifacts when you've got all these other named heroes. You could do the Lord Executioner, but he doesn't keep up with the Hex Wraiths as much. And the big thing you're trying to do actually with the Knight of Shrouds is you can have him go with a single unit of Hex Wraiths, then another one go on the other side here. The Knight of Shrouds can do his thing where he fights and pulls in Hex Wraiths and they get +1 to hit. Then you can all out attack the other ones. So if you really want to, you can make sure that a bulk of your army is getting that +1 to hit on the turn that you want it.
I'm going to throw a curly question at you. Just play hypothetical with me for 1 second, then we'll go to list 3. Play a game with me. Let's say GW wakes up tomorrow and realizes that Nagash is 30 points too expensive. So he's really 850, right? Got 30 points. Would you trade the Knight of Shrouds for Reichner, knowing that you wouldn't get an artifact and a command trait in this list? Basically, what I'm asking you is, would you take a double unique hero and sacrifice the command trait and the artifact? That's really the root of my question.
I think not. I think that if we change that question to say Ulrich the Drowner instead, maybe, I don't know. In this hypothetical world, right? Like
210.
Yeah, and I think that there would be merit, right? Because if you're doing that, what you're telling yourself is that Nagash's revive and his Hand of Death and his ability to give everyone 5-up wards, those are your artifacts and command traits, right? I feel like if that's the concession you make, that's what you're convincing yourself that this is worth doing. The reason why not Reichner is because he excels at making himself a better caster, but I've got 9 casts on the other dude, right? So I'm not worried about getting 1 or 2 more there, but maybe there's a world where I do actually want to teleport the Hex Wraith outside of 7. So like something like Ulrich or Kurdos, maybe like that would even be a good one too, right? Then I have the supremacy and the ability to stop your commands and just big blocks of stuff, right? But really, I think if you were going to make any changes here, you'd want to cut down one of those reinforced units and put stuff that is going to be able to take the flanks for you, go steal the objectives, do the tactic play, because that's what you're lacking.
By the way, thank you for playing a game that I thought went way too long, but I appreciate that you gave the proper thought to this, because I picked a random thing with Reichner because obviously it's very similar, right? You've got your cavalry. It's a cavalry unique hero, plays a similar points value, but basically the answer I was looking for was that I think the ruler of the spectral host is just worth too much to give away and just run multiple unique heroes like that. That trait in itself is just too good.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't do it, but in a fun hypothetical world, I could see where you might.
Nah. No, in a hypothetical world, no, I would not trade. I would not trade that at all.
Right.
And list number 3 is one that I sent overnight, just as I hit my pillow and went to bed. And I said, "Hey Mason, do me a favor. Let's build a list that's less likely to be nerfed, and let's actually think about our infantry friends and maybe put a spotlight on some of the things that we haven't quite talked about." So list number 3 is still a Deathstalkers list. It's a 3-drop. Alinda's in there with a reinforced unit of Grimghast Reapers. You've got a Regiment 2, which is Reichnor with the Bladegeist Revenants reinforced, Hexrays reinforced, the Lord Executioner, who's both ruler of the Spectral Hosts, and Covenant Familiar. You've then got Regiment 3, which is Alrach, the Cownwraith, and the Grimghast Reapers. So what is this list trying to do?
Yeah, this list is a little bit closer to the one that I played against at the tournament by Alex Gonzalez. This one is a little bit more spread. You want to have more supremacy over the casting phase and hero phase than my original list did. You've got play with Ulrich to move Hexrays, Bladegeist Revenants, Grimghast Reapers. You know, you have the 3 reinforced units that you can teleport and be threatening flanks while still kind of progressing up forward. This one actually is sitting on 5 heroes. So we talked about, you know, potential of doing something like that. And this one offers that for you because you're utilizing 2 bonus hero slots with the Lord Executioner and the Cairn Wraith. Cairn Wraith being there to kind of hang out with the 20 Grimghast Reapers most of the time to make them +1 attack. Then you've got the individual unit of 10 Grimghast Reapers kind of just acting as my Dreadscythe Harridans from my first list, just another unit to fight and to come in and dogpile with a reinforced unit. You are still taking 10 Hexrays. I don't see a world where most armies aren't trying to take, you know, some of their cav. And in this instance, it just made sense to put them together because it's still, even with a little bit of a point hike, it's 30 wounds on a 4-up Ethereal with a 5-up ward a lot of the time. I still like them, right? Maybe not 2x10, maybe not 30 or 40 or however many people might try to spam into a list, but a unit of 10 still seems super worthwhile to me. That Lord Executioner's got a ton of debuffs, and now we've loaded him up with the Covetous Familiar that I kind of talked about. That I painted that picture earlier of like, if we put a bunch of resources on this guy, maybe we can actually maximize a bunch of debuffs on him. So this army here is kind of like debuff city, right? Lady O is saying you don't get any bonuses. The Lord Executioner is giving you -1 attack and the Covetous Familiar to hurt you. You've got your Wave of Terrors. You know, you just got a lot of debuffs working in your favor. This one's a little bit less all in and a little bit more about that board control, board denial. And again, this hopefully assumes that we're in a world where the cav is less valuable, but still decent, but you know, lean more into the infantry because that's where the Grimghast Reapers with the Cairn Wraith combo are really going to shine.
Yeah, I dig it. I like this. This is much more of a utility piece. It's certainly not what I would take to a tournament, but I do like it as well. Like it does give us a couple of ideas and some considerations. But again, play to the strengths and play to what you've got available to you. Just if I was starting Nighthaunt, or I was kind of like I just bought my Spearhead and I'm kind of building in, I just wouldn't go all crazy on some of these units because they are just at risk. But there are other units in the game that are at risk of being changed, and cavalry, I think in general, probably will see a points increase potentially. But
if you can get your hands on that Nighthaunt like Holiday Force box still for a couple $100, that's a screaming deal. It's a really nice box to pick up.
I don't think this magazine come to America, but I have so many of the Mortal Realms magazines, which was Sacrosanct versus basically Nighthaunt, and like that's how I built my Spearhead. Like I just used like the Chain Rust, the Spirit Hosts, and all the things that were already in there. Boom, magic.
I don't think we get that here. I think you're right.
No, you didn't get it. It was anyway.
Right.
I got a couple of burning questions for you, and then we can wrap things up if you've got a few more minutes. All right.
Yeah, shoot.
This is bonus after party time. So,
okay. Are we going quick fire or are we going depth answers?
Whatever you want.
Whatever feels good. All right.
We're on your time. It's my afternoon.
There you go.
So not Nathan. Mikey asking first and foremost, what's Mason's favorite color?
Purple.
Okay.
Yeah.
More serious question from Mikey. the usage of taking the double turn with Nighthaunt, how often is it worth losing a battle tactic against what factions and battle plans? Now, I think that later part is become super situational, but maybe talk me through more of the logic around, is it worth losing a battle tactic with Nighthaunt, and any maybe like if then statements here.
Sure. Yeah. I think that a blanket answer is yes, the double turn is still worth taking in a lot of circumstances, right? I think it's still as valuable as ever. And I think that you could, I'm not saying that it's the best, but I think you could make arguments that the double turn is more beneficial presently than it's ever been. Okay. In Nighthaunt in particular, especially with a list similarly composed to what I took, I would love to have a double turn because oftentimes that would result in me tabling my opponent, right? And if I can table you 1 into 2, when I'm low drops and I'm dictating the pace and I give you first and you come close and I crash into you and I get a double and I crash into you again, even if I haven't completely tabled you, the likelihood of you breaking out and recovering by any means is going to be significantly challenging. Okay. If I go,
How is that different to third edition? I want to pull you back for a second, because the third edition double turns were still very valued. They were highly valued. If you had the option, a lot of people would take it. So how so is it more valuable, given that probably the value of, say, for example, a battle tactic is worth more? Now you're trading off more.
Yeah, twofold. I think the underlying factor is that in third edition, by and large, we had lower pointed units and more models on the table, so you could set up and prepare for it in such a way that that you could plan on getting doubled and know that was going to happen. I think right now there's a little bit less knowing that a double turn is going to happen because there is that penalty. But I think the reason why it's even more beneficial now is actually because of how valuable the underdog mechanics are. Because if we're going into round 2 and I'm going to go down, let's say we got 10-10 and I'm going to take the double, then I'm going to go 16. You're either going to, 2 things are going to happen, or 3 things maybe. I'm going to table you. I'm going to pin you and cripple your tactic and objective game from here on out, or you're going to be relatively unfazed. I'm going to go down on points just by a little bit and then reap huge rewards from being the underdog. So because of that, that's what that extra incentive is it's written as a penalty, but in practice it actually works out to your benefit, because my goodness, is that extra CP is valuable, right? That means I'm guaranteed to do an extra spell on your turn for free, because then I can do anything else I want with the rest of my CP. So for that reason, the double turn is still really good. And if you think about it from a points ratio and points per game perspective, when 60% of my points are from the primary objectives, and it's the same as in third edition, but the numerical value of that is increased, I don't really care if I forego a single tactic in the early game, because I've got 4 more turns. I think that to say that short and sweet is that the earlier the double turn, the better for you, because you have more time to recover. But also, if it's resulting in me tabling you or pinning you or stopping you from scoring 5 points, then it was worth it, because now you scored even less than me, and that was supposed to be a penalty that I took for taking that position. So there's really not as much downside unless your double turn completely whiffs, and then you probably shouldn't have taken it in that instance anyways.
Nothing you said I disagree with. I just wanted to be able to unpack that a little more. There's still plenty of times where you shouldn't take the double turn, and
sure.
I would advise against it. Just because you have the ability to take the double turn doesn't mean you should. But it ultimately comes down to your point, can you capitalize on it, and can you either score your max points, and then, like, there's been plenty of times where I've double turned from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, and then I've just gone 10-10-10, like, you just 10 the rest of the game. But then there's plenty of times as well where you fail the battle tactic, or you fail the you only score 6, and that 4-point difference can actually be the difference at the end. It ultimately comes down to how you make the most of that double turn and then score the rest.
Yeah. And as an example, like in my final game with Tom Guan, he won Prio from 4 into 5 and did a little bit of quick calculation and talking out loud and quickly determined, oh, I can never take a double here because I need the battle tactic to win the game. So in that instance, it was like, oh, okay, even if I could theoretically wipe all your stuff off the board, I actually cannot afford in this instance to take that concession because it's too late. Our opportunity to recoup that has already passed.
Yeah, no, good thinking here. And again, this is where like battle plans and armies and which turn, and there's so many like underpinning like
Oh
what
yeah.
there is no silver bullet to when to and when not to do it. But good unpacking here. Manfred asking, how important is the drop game for Nighthaunt? Are you fine not having the choice of who goes first every time? And I think you've already kind of touched on this.
Yeah. I as a player, I want control because of things that I've already mentioned. People make mistakes at deployment. People underestimate your tankiness. I want to be able to say we're on a short deployment here. You put everything on the line. I'm going to send it, or you backboarded everything and I'm on the line here and you can't get to me. I want to give it to you and try for that double. Right. So I would say for me as a player, very important. I think if you're vying for 5-0s at GTs and you're going with the powerful stuff with the intent to win on the GT, it is a primary objective of yours to be as low drop as possible. But like you alluded to earlier as well, some people can't be bothered to care about that. I want to play my toys. I want to play the things that I want to play, and I'm going to build it. I'm avoiding auxiliaries perhaps still, but I'm 4 drops now because I want to have all the named heroes, and I like that. So I think that you're fine to do that, but I do think that if you're pushing that competition edge and you're going for that level of performance, you should always really care about the drop game.
I think for me, the question I would give to the Nighthaunt people is, what is your turn 1 battle tactic?
Yeah.
That to me is the better question, because you don't have cheap throwaway options, right? So if you are not in power, if you're going to be high drops, that's cool. Like, I actually don't think you need to be low drops. That's not a critical piece for Nighthaunt. But what is critical is, like, what are you going to do turn 1? Is it seize the center? Is it take the flanks? Is it going to be take their land? You know, what is it that you're going to do, and how does your battle tactic game unfold? Do you have the tools? Because you don't have cheap, fast, small units outside of the, for example, like take the lands for me is what, not take the lands, take the flanks is one of my favorite turn 1 battle tactics.
Yeah.
But for you to use your little teleport, you can't take that.
Yeah.
So you could use Chain Rasp, but Chain Rasp is 10 models that you have to get within 6 inches. That could be a stretch in some of the battle plans.
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going Caesar Center and you're going to have to guarantee yourself the CP to get on the line? Whatever the answer is, there is no right or wrong. It is, what is your plan?
Yes. Yeah. And do you have a plan if your opponent tries to counter that, right? Let's say you set up, because I'm going to take the flanks, assuming my opponent's going to give me the first turn. What do you do when they run their flanks up and get in your face and prevent you from standing in that spot? What do you do now, right? So looking at that and then knowing what your outs are, I think that's really big. But yeah, if you can know the pack ahead of time and know the missions, that can help you dictate what your unpacking wants to look like. And then also your drop count and realizing that you know, and it's actually like really few and far between now, right? Like people are between like 2 and 5 drops, sometimes 1. So we could say 1 and 5, but before you could be like 1 drop or 3 or 13, you know? So, and there's nuance to the drop game that I don't want to get into on here, and you can game that system still a little bit, kind of like 2nd edition, but by and large, I do believe that it is important. But I agree, Coach. The bigger thing is your preparation and your decision making of what you're going to do if and when you are given first, or if you get the opportunity to go second.
Yeah, the average list is 3 drops.
Yeah.
You know, you are absolutely seeing 2 drops. I have not seen many 1 drops.
Yeah.
They are quite rare. Which you can do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
unless you're doing
I
like
played against a Nurgle guy that was a 1 drop, you know, and I wouldn't do that, but he did it, and he definitely got to decide. And that Nurgle list just like sends it faster than my list does. So
and Nurgle definitely has the tools, right? You know, you got a lot more 500, 7-point things, 700
yeah,
point units.
right.
You don't have the density of 2K under 1 list, unless you're going Nagash. A couple more burning questions. Knave of Diamonds asking, how aggressively do you deploy the Nighthaunt currently? Are you looking to alpha strike turn 1? What about when you're not getting the choice of going first, going second?
Yeah, so we did talk about that briefly, but I kind of set my stuff up on the line most of the time, right? 2 units of horses and 20 Blade Guys Revenants pretty much on the line, with heroes, crossbows, and Dread Scythe Harridans behind them, and then Dreadblade Harrows just like literally anywhere. Usually just like touching a point so that I didn't have to worry about them on, I own these points and then I'm going to leave. So they just kind of go anywhere. But again, it really depends on what my opponent does and what battle plan that we're on. There were plenty of times where I was not afraid of anything. So I would give them, because I knew if I give you the first turn and you're staring down my army on the line, you have to do 2 things. You have to play reserved and not score max points, or you need to try to take a position in which you think you're going to deny me from getting as many points as you did, right? Most people would do that one. They would try to move out. They would take the middle so that I couldn't do it. They'd put stuff on the flank so I couldn't try to do that. And they would try to take that first turn opportunity to deny what I could do in a follow-up, that if they wanted to give me second turn, right? Most times, other than the 1 drop, I got to decide. Now, when I played the Nighthaunt Mirror the first time, I gave him first. I ended up winning that game by 1 point. We had to do a rematch in like round 6 or something, just because some odd structure to the GW events. But he won the die roll that time and gave me first. And inside, I was like, yes, because he set up on the line and we're 18 inches away, and I've got 2 units that move 12 and run in charge. So I was all about it. I was like, okay, boom, here's the send, right? And there were plenty of times where sending it on top of 1 was the best thing, because then I was doing that pinning and denying for what they could do in the second turn. So it did really depend on what they did and what their output was. But you could reliably, with a list like mine, send it and feel good about that. Yeah.
I was just rereading one question because I'm like, all right, I'm going to read it to you.
Okay.
It's not the best question, Lucky saying, are Blade Guys Revenants better than Graveguard? And I'm like, why are we comparing 2 different units in 2 completely different factions that I can't even ally anymore? So it's not even a choice. Like, I can't even bring Graveguard into my Nighthaunt. But let's play the hypothetical question. Do you have any favorites?
Blade Guys Revenants or Graveguard?
Yeah. I think the answer is clearly Blade Guys Revenants, because we're on the Nighthaunt show and we need to appease to the Nighthaunt.
Right. I'll tell you what, though. Tom's Graveguard against me were quite powerful, but my Blade Guys Revenants did work all weekend. They dropped things left and right. Buckets of attacks on 3s and 3s is nothing to scoff at. Rend 1 damage, like 20 of them are doing 61 attacks on the charge, or 60 attacks on the charge, or whatever. Really, really good. Hard to say one way or another. I think I'll side Nighthaunt, like you said, because we're on the Nighthaunt, and both models are kind of awful to fiddle with. So
they're both really good units. Like,
yeah,
we
they're both
know
great.
Graveguard slap. I'll always take the movement that the Blade Guys have. Like, this game, is less about combat, more about movement and positioning. So I will always probably take that over the Graveguard. Yes, they're good, but
yeah,
screw you. This is the Nighthaunt show. Blade Guys Revenants for the win.
Yeah.
Last question coming from Nathan Blackmere. He asked 2 questions. All right, he's a local?
Yeah.
That would make more sense, because the first part of his question is, ask Mason how he got to be so devastatingly debonair, please.
I was born this way, I guess.
Okay, Lady Gaga. And the other part to that is, why are Dreadblade Harrows the best unit in the game?
Oh, man, that ability to move on both players' hero phase. Like I said, I can't think of another unit in the game that I want to take 2 of that are like going to guarantee me 3 battle tactics, if not could do all 5 battle tactics on their own. That's not all the time that's going to happen, but they have a reasonable opportunity to just do 5 battle tactics and be 320 points for 2 units. So they're really good. In a pinch, I use them to be the solidifying damage for a fight, because they also still run in charge. So yeah, I'm teleporting, but then when I'm done, I'm moving them 16 inches inward and pincering from back corners or something like that. And they did also increase the on the charge. They do increase the objective control, the OC. So they have more utility outside the teleport, but yeah, they're just really groovy for their points.
They are really good. I would kill for a war scroll like that. I think everyone would, to be fair.
Oh yeah,
kill for a war scroll like that.
Yeah.
Mason, we have gone over time, and I appreciate all the extra time you've given to our Nighthaunt friends. And despite being an ethereal tourist, you have definitely proven that you have read the faction pack. You have the tools and the skills, and you are more than just someone who's net listed, done well, and you have clearly studied this pack really well. And I appreciate all of the insights, and I hope everyone listening to this has taken away a bunch of things. And again, we share some of these negatives because not to scare you, or not to be complaining about the game, because it's the reality right now. This is how you are, but know that the state will not be like this for a long time. So choose your battles carefully, make the most of things while you can, but know that there's probably going to be, whether it's day 30, whether it's 3 months, whether it's 6 months, whether it's the next GHB, who knows, there's probably going to be a couple of changes coming down the line. So make the most of it while you can. Mason, is there any people you want to shout out? Anything, if people want to chat to you? You are absolutely super active in my Discord. But where else can people find you on the internet, and who do you want to say hello to?
Oh, yeah, I'm on Twitter, I think, or X. I couldn't even tell you my name, but if you just search Mason Knox, I'm sure there's not a ton of us. You can find me on Discord. I'll answer any questions. I'm not a coach by any means, but I'll give you any advice that I can. I'll review your list. Just cut me some slack if I'm a little bit delayed in getting back to you. But I'm an open book with information, so if you want to chat, I'm happy to look into stuff with you, to work through it, to give you my philosophy. Not everything that I said and talked about today is going to click for everybody. And if you've got different paths and different strategies and different outlooks, then I love that for you. And I love that about Warhammer. So, bring that to me if you want, and and we can chat. I love different perspectives, and I know people have different play styles. So that's one of my favorite things about the game. Shout out to Games Workshop, I guess, for making an awesome edition. It was really cool to do the US Open and have Matt Rose there and get to talk with him for a few hours. I'm sure I bugged him a ton about questions and stuff. And the only shout out I have for a local to a friend, I was asked to do this. If Snuffy could please work on your models, that would be lovely. Thank you.
So you've heard it here on YouTube. So it's now official. Snuffy, you need to work on your models. I thought you were going to say something like, "Are you in Victoria's Secret?" I thought.
Oh yeah, that's my local club here.
I thought you were going to shout out Victoria's Secret. We're like, nope, we're going to just tell Snuffy.
I'll let you
to
do that.
Models.
Thanks, buddy.
Well. Shout out to Victoria's Secret. And as we literally started recording, good friends of the channel, Rerolling Ones, I got a little picture. Now I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it looks like there was. Maybe a Shoe, maybe a Brent, maybe a Jack around a table.
In that kitchen cooking, baby. I'm ready.
They were around a table, and I don't know what they were doing around a table. There was certainly a battle mat and some terrain, and there was some things happening. Maybe they were discussing the latest wrestling show they went to, but who else knows what Rerolling Ones do.
Right.
Mason, you're a gentleman. Thank you so much for your insights. Everyone who listened to this, I hope you enjoyed it. You took something away. As Mason said, he doesn't know everything, but hopefully this is enough for you to get started, to think about how you think about Nighthaunt in 4th edition competitively. If you've got conflicting thoughts, leave them in the comment section and or have a conversation with us on Discord, because we all get to work through and kind of find all the little secrets and all the little boosts and the connections we haven't quite made just yet. I'm sure there is still a heap to discover. But on that note, Mason, thank you so much. Everyone who listened, thank you so much. And we will chat again soon.
Take care.
Bye for now. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you press like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AoS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a double one on a spellcast.